We're now live on YouTube.
Thank you very much. Right, welcome one and all. I'll just remind everyone that we are at a public meeting and that if I could just remind you as well, if you could please keep your microphones muted, and then when you wish to speak, put your hand up. The officers will help me out because I can't actually see most of you on the screen, unfortunately, and remind me who wants to speak, then I'll let you in accordingly. Also, when sorry, we'll move to declaration of interest now. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. So could you do a roll call, please? And then when you do a roll call, James, could people also indicate whether they've got any declaration of interest at the same time, please? Fire away, James.
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Adams.
No declarations of interest, Chairman, and now I am present.
Councillor Brennan.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Borman.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Catchpole.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Holland.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Karimi Givandu.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Kelly.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Morrell.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Nurden.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Prutton.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Riley.
Present, no declarations.
And Councillor Shaw.
No declarations.
And that's the committee members. I'll now ask for the other members present. Councillor Copplestone.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Emsell.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Leggett. I'm afraid you're mute, Councillor Leggett.
Mute. Present, no declarations. Sorry for the delay.
Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Present, no declarations.
That's complete. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
James, we've got Councillor Vincent in the room as well, please.
Well spotted, Emma. Well spotted.
You're welcome.
Councillor Vincent.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Right. Can we move on, please, James, to apologies for absence and any substitutes?
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Hartley. She doesn't have a substitute for the meeting.
Sorry?
There's no substitutes for the meeting.
I think there is. Sorry, I'm just a bit confused here. So Councillor Leggett here isn't a substitute today. He's just attending.
I haven't been informed that Councillor Leggett's a substitute.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move on to the minutes. Item 3 for a true and correct record. Page, if you can please turn to page 6 on your agenda. And we'll go through each page accordingly. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Yes, very long agenda. Can we agree those as true and correct record, please?
I so propose, Chairman.
I'll second
Thank
that.
you. Thank you, Vice Chair, for actually speaking there. It was very helpful. And also, we'll move on to matters arising. 2 from me, just to report back on the last Cabinet meeting on our recommendations. As you'll recall, we had a recommendation in line with the officers' rollout on laptops that we also roll out as well the council rolls out as well for the committee, for the members of the council, elected members. That was not agreed at cabinet, but there was an amendment put forward at cabinet to put aside 35,000 of budget for future IT for members. It's not specified whether that would be for laptops or for whatever it would be. It's just not specified at the moment. And that was on that. And then, of course, we have the call in today in relation to the members' grant scheme. And I'll go over that in more detail, of course, because we have a call in on that one when we arrive to it, when we arrive at it on the agenda. Are there any other matters arising? Can't see hands up.
It looks like there are none, Chairman.
Thank you. On to Chairman's announcements. I think it was Grant at the last meeting also reminded everybody that we still have our pre-budget ONS to complete this year. And I informed the meeting that I wasn't engaging with the officers around that. I'm sure it did happen. Rodney's been working away on this and other officers. You've all had an email now that we do have that on the 24th November. So those of you that attended last year's pre-budget will recall how that is done. Now, of course, because we're in COVID, it's a lot more complicated, a lot more difficult. We normally have sessions as we move around the room with the heads of department. So we're going to have to do this in kind of breakout sessions within Zoom. So it's all being organised at the moment. Whether it works or not is another thing. Hopefully it does. And then I'll be communicating with the officers in the near future about trying to make sure that's all working properly for us and see if we can deliver that. So that's on the 24th committee. And look forward to seeing you there on that one. We'll move on now to public speaking. James, is there any?
There's no public speaking, Chairman.
Right, thank you very much, James. Moving on to item 7, which is future community grant scheme call-in. Excuse me. Call the matter in because we have as I said, the recommendations were rejected from the OMS put forward at the cabinet. There are two sections to this, really. We have the officers' recommendations. When you look at your papers, A, B, and C. Sorry, B, C, and D. If you look at B, C, and D, those were the officers' recommendations after review. And following that review, this is what the officers came back with. ONS looked at this. Well, we had quite some debate about this, and we also concluded that we would recommend that as well. And then you look at E, and this was the ONS recommendation picking up from a year ago when we felt that really the scheme should be increased from the 500 at the moment to 1,000, plus also community grant scheme, similar along the lines of South Norfolk. So that was under E. And there's also F as well. When this was called in over a year ago, there was a risk attached to it, which was printed within the PH1. And the risk was that with the scheme just moving down to a grant scheme now from members grant scheme at 23,500, the risk was that the public may feel that the grant scheme is not ably supporting the policies of the council, particularly on well-being. And that was flagged up as a risk on the PH1. And that was one of the reasons it was called in last time round. So in operating like that we have had, that risk still needs to be kind of covered and altered and addressed because it's still the same figure. And we all have our operating experience since then in terms of needs within the community. Does that risk still exist? Does it undermine the council's own policies? So that's picking back up on the previous call in regards to that. So I'd just like to ask the officer now if she would come in and present the report she did last time round and just go over that. And then I'll ask the cabinet member, Jo, to come in if she could then elaborate upon the reasons why the cabinet rejected the proposals from the officers and from us. So I think it's, sorry, Kerry Gallagher.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that Mike is taking the lead on this morning. I may be wrong. Please correct me, Mike, if I am. I'm happy either way.
No, it's fine, and I'll start, Chairman, if you want, and then and Kerry can always fill in.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
So we looked at the report. It's as the report said, it's community grants changes regularly, and it's a really good practice. And you see this in the lottery and all funding bodies. They review regularly the kind of landscape they're working in, the different types, because grants change all the time and communities change all the time as well. So it's really good practice annually to just have a refresh and have a look at the grants, just to put some ideas forward to see whether it still resonates with the area we're working in. I think particularly with grants for a council, we've got that additional, I guess, pressure of taxpayers' money. So we need to ensure that what we're spending our money on is the right things and we're doing it in the right way. So we put a report together which went to the Economic Success Panel and has gone to Scrutiny, just to really look at is this still right, and are we still on the right track? It is acknowledged that this year that we've only been going fully really one operational year. This year really is a completely different year because of COVID, so acknowledging that as well. But we still thought it was good practice to just to throw some ideas up and see where they are. So that was looking at some of the ideas around how do we make sure we engage with those community groups to support them, to not to change the role of member, because the role of member is critical in member war grants. But how to make it easier for members to or community groups to contact members, and that was a potential idea that could be chewed over. We looked at whether or not there's how do we deal with the underspend. There was a relatively low underspend last year. This year, as I say, is going to be a funny year. So in terms of spend. So whether there's something we need to do there, and that's good practice to do, because really we don't really want to be talking about underspend. We want to be talking about spend. So ideally that spend is used all year. And so how can we ensure that we don't roll over money? We don't need to roll over money. So there were some ideas over there for that one. And really just reflecting on the fact that Broadland Council has taken a big leap in terms of the community lottery. And so how can we use, because what we don't want to do, we don't want to use the community lottery, the member ward spend, the money we have with SEAL, and this is all pots of money. Our community is all one. So we don't want to just create silos in terms of money. We want to think about this as a round to ensure, because ultimately we're looking at how do we support our communities to be the best that they can be, and how do we look at issues in our communities and help provide small amount of funding to address that. So we wanted really a community lottery, and then how do we work in partnership with our planning colleagues as well to really bring that into one collective group. So that was the ambition and aim of the report, to really flag up, are there any improvements we want to make this year, acknowledging the fact that we've only really been going one full year. In terms of the debate about 500 or 1,000, and that's a debate which is really down to members. I would say we wanted to flag it up that because ONS had done, the feasibility study has said that there is an overall reduction in expenditure at the council which is to reflect the costings of the council in the future, future-proofing the medium-term plan. Obviously, if we do go for a raise in community grants, then obviously it's got to come out somewhere else. But we wanted to flag that up because that's ultimately a political decision about where you would like to put your money. And so a report went in, and that's where we are. Happy to answer any questions, Chairman, or Kerry, if you've got anything else.
Yeah, just first of all from me, the review, and a year ago, ONS asked for a review on it as well. But what was being reported back last time, of course, Mike, and thank you for your presentation there, by the way, is that this was in large part due to the feedback as well. So it's not just having a review, officers sitting in an office. The feedback for the propositions that was being put forward by officers, Mike, it actually came from feedback from members and from elsewhere as well. So, for instance, there was the issue that was raised last time around the bank accounts, that some members of the public, it was felt a bit awkward at giving bank account details to a councillor, and therefore there was also the proposition in there in terms of communities getting a little bit more kind of directly on part of the form filling at least. So this was actually in large part due to the feedback from elsewhere and members in the operating experience of the scheme. And I believe, Mike, that helped to lead you to the recommendations that you put forward last time. Would that be correct?
Yes, I mean, anything we can do. I mean, it's in some ways there's the two elements. There's what are we trying to achieve with member ward grants, and the mechanics of doing it. And as Broadland Council is a continuing improvement ethos, if there's ways that absolutely we can look at, over time, speeding up what we don't want to do, and the idea we put forward to members is there ways that we can speed up the process for you, so you haven't, there's less churn in terms of the practical process of paying grants, and more thinking about the time to, what grants is suitable. There's also one thing with members ward grant. It is a rare element in government that members have actually a budget themselves. So there does also, we do need to reflect on that there's some accountability, and the accountability as a budget manager for a member is that you decide where that grant goes within the overall framework of full council, and you collect the details. So there's a balance there between in making it easy for members in the community to process that, but also making sure that the member is still accountable for getting those right details in.
If I may just add to that, the idea about being able to receive more information from the community was simply that it was a more of a sort of electronic hello, really, for somebody to say, I've got a group that's interested, and ultimately members do still have publicly available telephone numbers, email addresses. So it is possible for community members to still make contact. It was simply a case of offering an alternative to that. So there's still plenty of opportunity for community members to do that, with or without this. Really, I don't want you to think that members are kind of uncontactable because that didn't happen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and of course we have the big county council out there with their £6,000 scheme for highways, a little bit more prescriptive in terms of the criteria for that and the form filling. And there are a number of other councils that do this. South Norfolk, of course, also have the £1,000 there, 50. So it does happen around the country, members' grant schemes as well. Thank you very much. Okie dokie. So Kerry, did you want to add anything else?
Not at the moment, no. I think Mike and I went through things yesterday, just in case I wasn't able to be here. So he was well prepped, I think, ready for the occasion. So I think he's covered everything so far. But as I'm here, I can answer any questions.
Okay, and we're absolutely confirming here that you're in your proposition within that paper that there was never ever an intention to take the decision making away from local members. Absolutely. And indeed some of the form filling is actually just to help a bit in that direction. Because I did feel that wasn't clear at the cabinet last time round, but of course we're going to ask Jo in a moment.
And it is absolutely right, Chairman. That it's a member ward grant, and if we can help support members and work closely with the communities, that's great. But yes, it's a member ward decision as long as it fits in with the full council remit. Yes,
that doesn't change at all.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So could I invite Jo? Are you there? Could you just give me a yes at the moment?
Yes, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, welcome, Joe. With smiley face, how are you today?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Good, good. Okie dokie. Yes, so if you could address this, Joe, from the Cabinet's positioning, because there wasn't any real sort of explanation around why at the Cabinet, and I know there's time pressures there as well, but could you, so under B, C and D, first of all, if you could categorise that out, because it's the officer's recommendations, if you could just go through those in terms of your reasoning at the Cabinet for not supporting the recommendations, that'd be great, Joe. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Steve. I think we need to go back to the original ambition of the member grant scheme. This was meant to help members get closer to communities, and was meant to just be a really, sorry, my phone is going, a really simple grant scheme. And as Mike was
Joe,
saying,
do you want to just, Joe, do you just want to stop
minute?
for a moment, please? Yes.
Sorry about that, Steve. I'm in my office, the phone rang. Okay, so the original ambition of the members grant, you know that we're only in the second year of this, was a very, very simple grant scheme. No whistles, no bells, not a great expense to the council, but with the ambition of getting members working more closely with their communities. And I think that has worked really, really well. As Mike said, the underspend last year, our first year of this grant scheme, was only about £2,000. And I think that was 3 members that didn't engage with the community grant scheme. And then just a small amount of underspend from a couple of other councillors. I don't think it bears any relation to what the budget is in South Norfolk. I think Broadland has decided that £500 is adequate, because it's really not about the money we get. And I don't think that members here should follow a money-centred approach, but focus on problem solving to help their communities understand better their needs. And I think if I'm talking about budgets, we now have the community lottery, which is going to, I think, do really great things for communities. I've had several people contact me in my area already who are very, very keen to set up with the lottery, not just for capital projects, but also to help their revenue. And we all know that it's a really difficult time at the moment during COVID. A lot of our charities and groups are sort of finding it quite hard. So the community lottery, getting sort of parents and grandparents and sports clubs sort of supporting them all, would be really, really great. At Cabinet, we talked about the mechanism for the underspend that Kerry put in the report, but we think it would be more equitable to all members just to have their £500 and give them more personal responsibility in making sure that their grant is spent to capacity. The number C, letter C, the accessibility for community groups to input at the application process, including bank details. Yes, I can understand why Kerry brought this up, but I think we're getting away from the intention of the member grant scheme. This is all about members. And I think Cabinet thought that it should be members doing the work and getting this done, rather than the onus being on the community groups. I understand that a few of you were slightly embarrassed about asking for bank details from the community groups. I think, however, we live in a world where most people are paid by backs, and it's fairly normal for businesses and also for charities to give their bank details out so that they can be paid by bank transfer. Going on to D, the formalised branding, I think we're getting away again from the intention of the grant scheme. the onus is on members to promote this grant scheme, and we don't feel that formalised branding is really appropriate, because it's just spending more money when we think it's really the members that should promote this within their communities. So that's what I would say on that. And in fact, Broadland News is about to go into print, and there was a great piece in the forthcoming Broadland News with pictures of members looking at what the grant scheme was spent on last year, our first year. And I think by putting it in Broadland News and talking about these good news stories with members, that will promote the scheme going forward. And so we didn't understand why there was a need for formalised branding. Is there any other questions anyone would like to ask me? Because I think I've covered most of it.
Well, hold on, Joe. If you can just hold on, I'll cover that because I'm chairing the meeting, if you wouldn't mind. Just first of all, before I open it up, Joe, I think there's a misunderstanding, and I think this is maybe part of the problem in terms of what is being said by the officers, at least in some regard, and what is being said by the members, at least in some regards. You mentioned the issue about the bank statements, and in this day and age, people do bank transfer. That's not the point. The point that was being made is this: it's one thing for community groups to give their bank details to a corporate body, like a service provision company or the council, but it's another thing, and this is the problem that we've picked up on, for somebody out there in a little community group, or somebody heading up a project on their own around something, to actually then give the bank details to what they term as a counsellor. And that was the point that was being raised. The officers are here, they will back that up, because that was the point that was being fed back in, that it was being thought that in some cases there was people that was reluctant to give their bank details to an elected councillor because it's a person, because it's actually a councillor. So in that set of circumstances, that it would be that people would be able to fill that bit of the form in on their own. So it's not talking about the whole form, but something that bit of the form. That's what was being talked about at the time, a reluctance to give it to a person rather than a body, a corporate body. So just clarifying, that's what the point was about. And also, Joe, I'll just ask you something else. You said it's not a budgetary issue. You said that it's not a budgetary issue in terms of South Norfolk. I mean, the spend is actually 0.0 half of a fraction of a point actually for Broadland. So I get the point. So it's not a budgetary issue here. The money is very, very small. It's a very small amount. And I heard you say that, Joe. It's a budget. It's not a budgetary issue. So it is 500, and that you deem that 500 is adequate. And that's the decision. I'm just clarifying the decision, and that you deem that 500 is adequate. Is that correct?
So going back to the bank details, the council is a corporate body and members are in a leadership position, in a position of trust. And I think there should be trust between community groups and their district members. So I really can't sort of see the problem with, it's not a sort of individual person that isn't the councillor. The councillor will contact the member through the secure email, their councillor email, and get the bank details and fill in the form on the iPad. So I think there is quite a lot of security surrounding the bank details. So I don't see a real problem with that, Steve. Going back to the amount, we all know that councils will be under more and more pressure, and the feasibility study that we went into collaboration with South Norfolk said that we're doing that to make savings, not only that strategic growth obviously, but to make savings. I think during COVID, a whole lot of money has been spent by government. We need to protect our residents and give them the best value. And as I said before, this scheme is really got the intention of it was to be really simple, give the residents the best value. It wasn't about a money-centred approach, but a problem-solving approach, and getting the members working with the communities. There are other funding streams like the community lottery, and we've now said that we will give 10% of the lottery funding to a startup grant, start up new community groups, which I think is excellent. For larger projects, there is still funding. And as a cabinet, we felt that the £500 per member was an adequate amount. You can get an awful lot done with small amounts of money, and that was the original intention. So that's what we talked about at cabinet, and I would stand by the fact that we are giving £500. I think Kerry wants to come in, if that's okay, Chair.
No, it's not at the moment. Thank you, Chair. Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify again another point before we move on, and that is it's about feedback. So it's feedback coming into the officers, feedback that we've had as members, them coming forward for decision making. So, for instance, on the 500, as I said, I know that my 500 last year went down to a centre, the Old People's Friendship Centre, which is voluntary, run by a lot of old people, by the way. They need a disabled toilet, and they had to raise £6,000 for all these refurbishments. They've been to Tesco's, they've been everywhere they can. Really worked hard for 2 years. And they're out there doing Meals on Wheels as well, voluntary. And last year, that's where I put my 500. They are still today £1,000 short a year later. And they're out trying to do whatever they can. So I know that in my area, and I'm just touching on the underspend here, Mike's absolutely right, and I believe the officer's correct in this. We don't want an underspend. We want to spend what's available. And we know that in certain areas, it may be that a councillor's not tuned into a particular community, therefore they don't spend their money. It may be that in that particular community that year, there isn't actually a need, but there is in hotspots elsewhere around the district. So in other places, at other points in time, that underspend could be spent with the mechanism that the officers are putting forward by closing off in January, and then it comes back out again. But we're going to have communities denied money that is available because we're not applying the underspend mechanism. And that's a fact. If there is an underspend, there would have been with this mechanism communities that need the money, want the money, and it would have been available to them apart from this mechanism. So that's just a fact. So I know your position on that, Joe. I'm not getting into argument here, is that you think that's okay. You've said that. I will now move back on to Kerry. Thank you, Kerry.
Sorry, mine was just a very small point, just around the detail. The report today talks about an application. Just to reiterate our previous point, that this isn't an application form. This is a decision of members to make that agreement to fund. And in addition, just around the bank details, the feedback that we received was actually regarding customers being able to contact members in a different way. I think that the issue around bank details was perhaps more of a concern for members. We haven't received that concern from members of the community, that they're worried about bank details, but I appreciate that members were quite concerned about that themselves. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points before we move on.
Appreciate that, Kerry, because yeah, I'd have picked up the same thing. There was a number of members concerned about asking the bank details. I personally wasn't, but that's what I understood. It's about opening up just another way, perhaps, of doing that. So I'll open it up now for other members of the committee. And again, I can't see everybody here, so if you'd like to
Councillor Ballman's got his hand raised.
Chairman, if I can assist, Councillor Ballman, then we've got Councillor Nerdon, and then Councillor Shaw.
Okay, Peter, fire away, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As you may know, I'm very much an advocate of keeping things simple. And I don't certainly like things that are overcomplicated. Having said that, though, what I don't like to see is an underspend in an area of budget. Either the budget was wrong in the first place, or people are not using it as it was intended. However, if there's an underspend in some areas, that seems to be the case, then there's no reason that I can think of why that underspend projected shouldn't be redirected to those areas where it can be spent. And I think it's unfortunate that the scheme as I see it now doesn't allow for that. I know there's a mechanism that was perhaps a little complicated and probably could be simplified. It's a question of where it is in the year to ensure that the people who would have spent it but had it redirected elsewhere do get the opportunity to spend it. So I would like to see the opportunity included in the report for underspends to be redirected at some point in the calendar year where it's obvious that the recipient was not going to be able to spend it. As to 500 or 1,000, I'm not happy about increasing any expenditure without it being formally included in a budget review. I don't think the ONS or indeed any other committee should look at increasing expenditure without it being properly budgeted and reviewed in a budget. Why £1,000? Frankly, it's been plucked out of the air as far as I can see. £500 is a starting point. It's a good starting point. I've spent mine quite happily on 2 years. I could easily spend another £500 or even another £1,500. But the budget is what it is. And unless there's a good reason for increasing it, and I don't want it increased to an arbitrary amount, I want a proper full discussion about why it should be at a certain level, what it could do, what it should do, rather than just increase it arbitrarily, because I don't think that's a very sensible way of spending money. So those are my observations, Chairman. And if you recall, when it was actually discussed at the last ONS, I didn't support it. I'm not sure I saw that in the minutes anywhere, but I would just like to re-emphasise that.
Thank you, Peter, very, very much. Thank you for and reminding the committee of that and the points you've made. Councillor Nurdon.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, just the 2 points. Firstly, to deal with the bank account. I know that when we fill out the grant application form, we are required to give a whole lot of information. And one of those pieces of information is the name and email address and telephone number of the contact person or the project manager of that particular group. And I think that us, as opposed to the the corporate body being the council, requesting bank account details, it's just a suggestion that instead of the council member, asking the group for the bank account details, maybe the application form can go in, and then the officers who are reviewing the application by the member can then say, right, okay, well, we need to now pay this money because it is in accordance with the rules. We will then, as Broadland Council, approach that project manager and say, please, can you now send us the bank account details so that we can pay this money to your organisation. So it's just a separation that could be considered as an amendment to the process. The other thing is that I was at a parish council meeting last night. I advised them that I had spent 400 of my my grant, or should I say I had allocated, because I'm in the process of filling it out. But there was an additional request for a further £425 that the parish council was being asked to fund, which with their limited resources, they kind of like said, well, it's not that easy. So I thought, well, if they can delay starting the project until after March next year, then I would be able to give them that £425 that they needed. But they were keen to start the project, which then created the problem that I couldn't fund it next year because we don't fund retrospective projects. So I would certainly I wouldn't mind if there was an underspend on £1,000, but the number of members that have indicated to me that they have been requested to spend more than £500 indicates to me that this is something that we should consider maybe having a further debate about it, but that is, as Peter says, for another time. But to consider increasing this this amount. And then the last question that I have is in paragraph 2.6 of the papers on page 25. It says all projects funded met the ground rules, and how do I know? What assurance do I have that those projects that have been funded in the previous year did in fact meet the ground rules? And this is an aspect that I was wondering whether our monitoring officer with her audit hat, whether we could possibly have a look at having an independent examination of whether the rules have in fact been met in all cases. So I'll leave those points with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, regarding the points that Councillor Bullman makes, I agree entirely. I had a problem. I didn't spend the money last year. The reason being, I was turned down 3 times by the person I spoke to, who was at South Norfolk of all places. I wanted to start a bus service for elderly people living in sheltered housing, and they turned me down totally. I did actually manage to get the service going through a charity instead. So that's where my 500 would have gone and should have gone. But as I say, I was turned down, which was pathetic, I thought. When it comes to 500 or 1,000, I think, once again, as Councillor Bullman said, that's something that needs to be looked at and talked about and decided upon at a slightly later date, I think, not done today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chairman, we also have Councillor Holland and Councillor Karima Van Loo, but I am conscious that potentially Mike Pursehouse would like to come in on a couple of the points raised. So how would you like to manage that? Would you like Mike to come in now or after?
I think, yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Emma. That's actually. I also just saw Ken's. Did I see Ken's hand go up? Because I've got one of the few screens I've got here is Ken as well.
Yeah, we've got Councillor Kelly and Councillor Catchpole as well, Chairman.
Councillor Murrell has raised his hand as well.
Murrell. Okay. Thank you. Yes. So Mike, would you like to come in at this point?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points to raise. Just on the bank details and the information. The member is actually the registered data controller of that information. So they are the ones who collect that information and they hold them and they're responsible for that information. And that's important. This is where we move from officers to members, and where members have got specific responsibilities around this area. So collecting that information, and what we should do is to collect that information in a secure and simple way as possible, and make sure that there's as few as chance of that information becoming a problem as possible. So, collecting information once is a really good model to work to then bring that in, bring it into the secure databases of the council. And that would be difficult if you then start asking for forms twice, and then you're just doubling up on the potential issues there. In terms of the ground rules, and as I said, is members are free to spend as long as it fits in with the council ground rules. And in terms of the audit question, basically any grant that comes in that doesn't meet the basic ground rules is then blocked and then won't go through. So the audit trail is that no grant can actually be approved unless it meets the ground rules as they're met by full council, and that's to ensure that that we just don't go off on all sorts of grants. We have some sort of defined ground rules and conditions for grants. So I just wanted to pick up those 2 points, Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Excuse me, Councillor Holland.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's a couple of points I wanted to make, really. One is that we regularly hear about the SIL monies and the lottery, and I'm quite happy with those, but I really want to just stress that they are related to the SIL money, for example, is a loan based on monies that the councils will already receive and will have to be paid back from that money, and the lottery people are paying into. So our residents who are supporting a charity of some sort will be buying tickets for that lottery. So it's not something that we're doing as a council. So I thoroughly agree that the member ward grant is absolutely excellent for getting you involved with your community. I've had no problem with that whatsoever. I think that needs to be stressed, that is something that we can do as councillors that is different from those other aspects that have been mentioned. So my biggest concerns really are the underspend, and I do entirely support the idea that any underspend should be available to go to any other area where it's needed. I think that, that would resolve some of those issues, and it does make it seem that then us councillors are really trying to work in all our communities and give the best we can to where it's needed most. I really do think that's something we need to consider. I accept what people are saying about the amount need to be revised, but I'm not quite sure how that mechanism works, because as I understand it, we did ask about this last year to be, the possibility of increasing it to 1,000, and we're now bringing it up again. So I suppose I'm flagging up, is there a way at some point then that we could have a proper discussion about this? Because we all know £1,000 per ward is not a lot of money in terms of the council budget. So when you're talking about reducing payments, frankly, it's diddly squat, isn't it? So, I think that the difference is that £1,000 actually can make a substantial difference to a small group. So in some cases, for example, the one I supported last year, that £1,000 would have helped them get their climbing wall much faster, rather than the £500 I was able to give them, because they had to get more than I could give them. So I just, for me, I think we do need to look at increasing the grant, and I need to see where that mechanism comes that we can do that. And my other feeling is that we really do need to look at the underspend and make sure that it gets used in our communities as is expected, one way or another. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Sue Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. Listening to it being described as a cost to the council bothers me. I think it's really giving our communities a benefit, which can actually be a lot more valuable than the number of pounds spent. So I'd rather talk about it as a community benefit than as a cost to the council. And as a suggestion, is it not possible to do a poll by email of all councillors and ask them, would they have been able to allocate more than £500 in this last year, and to find out what they think, what we think is a reasonable amount, and then make a decision after we've collected that information, because I don't think we consult with our individual councillors enough on things like this. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, could I just remind everybody as well, Sue, that this is a call-in. We've had a cabinet decision on it. So what we're actually talking about here today is asking the cabinet to come along to explain that. Can they answer the reasons why they took a view to reject this? And then we'll come to a position at the end, and there are two options for us. The one that you just said isn't actually down for us to determine, but there are two options for us. So just coming back onto the people I've got down here now. Excuse me, Martin Murrell. Welcome, Martin. Glad to see you again.
Welcome. Thank you. I've got a couple of things. I was going to mention, Mike actually picked it up about GDPR and the member being the controller on the data, and therefore, as far as the bank issues, as previously advised, I mean, people now fill in so many bank forms that I cannot perceive it to be a problem, and I just think, as the data controller yourself, as a member, then that is what you should do. You should control that data and accept responsibility as the member. As far as the underspend, overspend, or whatever, again, looking at this, again, it looks at the cutoff point for at what point do you then start looking at the underspend? Is it in March? Does that underspend get carried forward to the next year? I just think it's the members' responsibility to engage with their community and to and spend the money accordingly. As far as the value, again, I think £500 is a reasonable level of grant, and then it becomes the member's responsibility to look at alternative funding. So if there is a project or anything, and again, the team are really, really good at Broadland, and I think if you speak with any of the officers, they will help and assist you to find some sort of alternate funding. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Ken and then Caroline.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, I've listened to all sides of the argument here, and some lovely points being brought up. I noticed with Sue Catchpole and with Councillor Holland, they're a little bit, thoughtful about actually how we're spending it and where we're actually doing it. And really, when we look at it, the perception is that South Norfolk gets 1,000 and we should have the same. Well, I don't agree with that. I think the way that we're going with the lottery coming in, there is quite a lot of new ways of the grant funding coming in. And I think really for us to make decisions here, we want £1,000 and that's the end of it because we want to be like South Norfolk. No, it's not. It's about the perception is the grant scheme working exactly as it should do? Are we getting value for money? Well, we are, but we're underspending it, so we're not doing it exactly right. And I think at this stage we should be looking at what the lottery comes out at and where the grants go, and we should look at it overall throughout the year. And at the moment, we shouldn't be arguing about whether it's 500 or 1,000, but seeing actually how the councillors' grant scheme for the local bits should be looked at in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before I let Caroline in, remember, again, I'm just coming down to the governance in terms of your decision as a committee. That was a decision made last year. It was a decision made again at the ONS going to Cabinet to actually ask for a £500 increase and also a £50,000 community grant scheme. So that was the recommendation that went through to Cabinet. And as Peter's reminded us, he did vote against that. So I'm just referring that for you, Peter, again, mentioning that for you. But everybody else voted the other way. And I think Sue abstained. I think Sue Pruton, abstained on that day. But anyway, but the key issue is that was the decision that was taken. And I'd just like to just touch on 2 points before I come on to Caroline. On the budget, what we had asked for last year, and it was actually in the report that went to full council, the ONS report, there was reference to this, that ONS had asked for a review of the member grant scheme that went to full council some months ago. So we've asked for a review, and so the review was asked a year ago about the amount of money. And what's come back is there was no mention of raising it at all or discussion about that whatsoever in this last year. It's just not happened. So we did ask for a review of that. The budget, of course, if the Cabinet had agreed to increasing it, it would focus in, not right now, it would focus in the next financial year. So that's the budgetary issue sorted out, just like anything else. Just like we just sorted out a Cabinet, or Cabinet sorted out going to full council on the 35,000. You know, we're not quite sure where that's come from or why that figure, but anyway, that's there going into the budget for next time. So that's not an issue actually around the budget. It go into the next budget, going into the calculation for this budget review, going to full council. And just making a reference again about where this came from, because I know memories, it's a long time ago. This goes all the way back to when we moved to a ward member scheme, and it kicked off on SEEC first of all. I was on SEEC, and the proposition that was put to us there was to move to a member ward scheme based on the model of South Norfolk. So it was clear it was on the model that South Norfolk currently have. It was made clear that they have £1,000. We should be operating as two councils, and therefore it was recommended that we operate the same scheme, and that we was also told, however, they are going to reduce to £500. Therefore, the recommendation is that we'd also operate this £500 mirroring South Norfolk. That's what happened. And if you recall at that call-in, I had all the minutes out. I had the minutes out for South Norfolk. I had the minutes out for the Cabinet down there. And they did discuss moving it to £500, but they kept it £1,000 and their community grant scheme. That's where the £5,000 came from, because originally it was discussed at SEEC. We was told it was being reduced to 500 in South Norfolk. Therefore, we should accept it at 500. I'm just going through the history and the facts on the paperwork around it as well. So, Caroline, I'll let you in now. Emma, have you seen anybody else after Caroline?
Bear with me, Chair. We Councillor Adams. Yeah, and then I think it's probably a good point there, Chairman. I think we've given it a good running then. That'd be a good time to wrap up and, as you say, decide next steps.
Well, yeah, Emma, I'm just asking, this was just asking who else is, was there anybody else? So this is what I'm asking.
Yeah, there was, we've just had Caroline, haven't we? So we've got Councillor Adams, and then that was it, Chairman.
Yeah, and that is the reason why I was asking, Emma, but thanks.
Same page again, Chairman.
Yes. Right. So Caroline and then Tony.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say a lot of the points I wanted to raise have already been covered. I am quite shocked the Cabinet didn't recommend the officer's recommendations or didn't accept the recommendations, really the underspend. I do believe that would be better used to top up other projects within the area, like Steve suggested. What Joe was saying about this is taxpayers' money, and considering this is only 0.1 of 1% of our total budget, I would have thought our taxpayers would be pleased that their money is being used to help community projects. I could spend this 3 times over in Taverham because I go out to the community and I talk to them. I'm just flabbergasted that they didn't recommend this. That's just what I want to say.
Thank you, Caroline. Tony?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, it's been a very thorough discussion and several points made. Just 2 things. Picking up from what Nigel said about, he tried 3 projects and they didn't qualify. I don't know about the rest of the councillors, I might be in the minority of one here. But quite frankly, I don't know those projects which will or could qualify for a community grant from us, those that wouldn't. I think that if officers could send round examples, obviously you can't have a comprehensive list. If they could send around examples of what could qualify, because there's always a question mark that could qualify for grant, and those that definitely wouldn't, I think that would be also quite helpful, certainly when it comes to situations that Nigel found himself in. I also agree with what Caroline said regarding underspend. I think any underspend should be reallocated to councillors who could spend the additional money in their own wards. So I'm totally in support of underspend being spent in other wards. As Caroline says, we don't have any problems sort of spending our £500 allowance in Haverham, and I think generally by and large at least 3 of the 4 councillors and mostly all 4 councillors actually put all their grant money together and to fund a single project. In other words, instead of it just being £500 and we each go our own separate ways, we all say, yeah, that's a jolly good project. Let's put money, let's put our grant towards it, and that bumps it up for me to 500 to 1,500 or even £2,000. So again, I think those of you that are in, 3 or 2 of you in a ward might consider perhaps, you might already do it, getting together and actually saying, yes, that's where we're going to put all our £500. And in your case, Steve, I don't know whether that happened or not, but with regard to your project that you mentioned, instead of it being 500, if you all chipped in the 500, that would be £1,500. Just my thoughts, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, I will just respond to that, Tony. I don't think that I think there's a misconception here. We've got a very large ward with 3 members in it. When you've got a small ward, it's got 1 member in it. In actual fact, I know that myself, David, and Sue Catchpole could have spent our money 10 times over. So us pulling together on that project, it meant that something else wasn't getting supported. We've got a boxing club down there who support kids, keep them off the street. They've got issues in terms of a whole range of things. Something I was involved with as a kid in terms of support as well in my local area around boxing clubs. They are desperate. So we're not just talking here, and I want to be really clear about a point of view I've got. I've hoped that we could do some overview scrutiny questioning here. I think that's happened in some part. I think another part we've done some views. So really looking forward to some further training coming forward in February, which we'll come on to at another meeting about overview scrutiny questioning. But just in relation to that, the point I was just making, just putting this straight, the need out there is far greater than what's being provided. And us clubbing together with £500, £500, somebody else down there who is raising money themselves are going short. So we're having to split this up and wrestle it around. So that wouldn't have helped, Tony, just on your point, it wouldn't have helped in that situation. So yeah, I'll wrap this up now. So referring back to the matter, we can, there's sort of 3 options here really. We can refer the matter back to Cabinet. We can also refer the matter to the Council in certain circumstances. The key issue here is whether you believe through scrutiny questioning that the Cabinet have adequately given the objective reasons as to why they believe they shouldn't go forward, or whether you think they should be referred back to Cabinet on 1, 2 or more points that was raised in the original recommendation, particularly on the officers going back to Cabinet. On any one of those, you can do it, all of the points that was originally by the officers. We're going to separate out the 2, the money and the officers. So I think that's right to separate out the 2, because the officers' recommendations had ONS support. The ONS recommendation on the grant was separate to have the officers support in that. I wasn't opposing it. So I think we separate out the two to make this easy for us and pointed. So basically, if we look at B, C, and D, they were the three officers' recommendations. And you can see the one where it's talking about the underspend, which was talked. Now, we might want to refer all of these back, none of them back, or one or two of them back. I've been picking up, I'm trying to work this together in terms of what I've heard from the contributions. I have heard a number of points here about the underspend and about that shouldn't be the case. I think Peter's made it, several other people have made it. So should we take these one by one in terms of whether we want to refer back to the cabinet or not?
Yeah, I will support that.
Okay.
If you're moving that, Chairman, I'll certainly second that. I think they need to be taken separately.
Yeah.
Because there's a diverse view across quite a few of them.
Yeah, that's right. And I think professionally, it's the only way to go. So, so under B, we had the recommendation and the mechanism, which was which was to close the scheme off in January. Was it January, February, Mike?
Yeah, I think it was February, Chairman, yeah.
February, yeah. And then you've got that extra month, and then if there's an underspend, it can come back out. Of course, the original member in that area, they can still apply for it again during that month. We clarified that at the ONS meeting, if you recall, because there was some queries around that. This is, yes. So do we, under B, want to refer this back in terms of the underspend and finding a mechanism to relook at that mechanism in terms of trying to make sure we don't have that underspend? Do we wish to refer B back to Cabinet? All those in favour?
Chairman, if I can assist, we have yourself, Councillor Catchpole, is your hand up, Councillor Adams, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Karimi Gouvanlou, Councillor Holland, Councillor Nerdon, Councillor Brennan, and Councillor Shaw, and Councillor Bullman. That's everyone. Yes, Chairman.
Thank you.
Excuse me, you didn't call my name. I'm terribly sorry. Which one are we voting on at this moment? B, C, or D?
This is B, Sue. So this is on the recommendation.
Okay. Yep. Okay. I'm for then.
Okay.
Apologies,
sorry about
Councillor.
that. That's all right.
So just recapping, Emma, because I'm blind, as you know. Not literally, but just on this electronic process. I won't mention iPads and laptops. Was that unanimous decision there, or was there?
That was, Chairman. Yeah,
right, okay.
I didn't see anyone not indicating.
Thank you. Okay, so now moving to C, more accessibility for community groups to input application process, including bank details given direct. Do you wish for that to be, that was a recommendation to be referred back to Cabinet or not? All those in favour of that, please show.
Councillor Adams, Councillor Catchpole, Councillor Riley. That's it.
And Councillor Shaw, Chairman.
Oh, and Councillor Shaw.
That's 5, is it?
4. 4. Okay. Catchpole, Shaw, Riley, and Adams.
Okay. And all those against?
Councillor Pruiton, Kelly, Karimi Gouvanlou, Holland, Murrell, Brennan. Bear with, I'm just going on to the second screen. And Bullman. I believe that's everybody.
7.
7. Okay.
Lost.
Yeah, it's lost. Yeah, I'm just loading up the figures, make sure we've got it right. So that's how many present, James?
At the moment, members 1, 2.
So that was 13, wasn't it?
12.
Well, you had 4. You had 4 against and 7 for just now. That's
4 to take it back to council. which was councillors Riley, Shaw, Catchpole and Adams.
Right.
And then how many did we have against, James?
7.
7, so that's 11. Do we have someone that hasn't voted?
Yeah, that's what.
Please speak.
Councillor
Councillor Nerdon.
Right. So are you abstaining, Councillor Nerdon?
He's nodding his head, Chairman.
Okie dokie. I'm blind, but my antenna is picking up there's a figure problem there. Right, so D, the introduction of more formalised branding and promotion, which again was the officer's recommendation. So all those in favour of that, please show.
2.
2, councillors Creamy,
That's
Gouvanlou
3.
and Catchpole and Riley. That's 3.
Okay. All those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Was it 8?
Hang on, let me start again. Can you leave your hands up? And I'm going over 2 screens. Apologies. Councillors Kelly, Adams, Pruton, Shaw, Murrell, Nerdon, Brennan, Bullman. Have I missed anybody?
I make that 8.
8, yeah. Do we have one
I
not
think we have an
voted? Is that
abstention.
correct? Do we have an
And so
abstention?
Sue Hollins, I
Abstaining,
think.
thank you.
There's 1 abstention.
And just to say to everybody, there's when you've only got 4, we do have to do this because I have been in other places and we had out of 15 committee, 14 abstained on one issue. So you do need to, you never know. Right, so that clears, and officers for governance here, that clears the officers' recommendations. We've got 1 going back to Cabinet. And we're not referring this to full council. Moving on to the members' grant scheme. Again, all those in favour of the previous ONS decision, which was 500 to move it to £1,000, plus also put in place a community grant scheme for larger projects of up to 50,000. All those in favour of that, please show.
Okay, so we have councillors Riley, Catchpole, yes. Yeah. Holland, Nerdon. That's 4. 4 or 4.
Yep.
And against,
Did
please.
you mention Creamy Gouvanlou was 4?
Was 4 as well. That's 5. Apologies, Caroline. And those against?
1, 2.
We have councillor Pruton, Adams, Kelly, Murrell,
6.
Brennan, Shaw.
I make that 7.
Yeah, and 7. 7 against, Chairman.
Yeah, it's 4, 7. That's
5 and 7,
yep.
Chairman. 5 and 7.
5 and 7, sorry. So that's 12. Yeah, we've got the figure. Brilliant, thank you. Okay, and then the last point here. This goes back to the original PH, and that's F, which goes back to last year on the call-in, when there was a statement in the PH in terms of risk that by having, the small members grant award now, the only thing funded by Broadland directly in terms of direct grants down at 23,500, that the public may see this as not adequately supporting Broadland's policies on well-being, etc. So there was a risk there flagged up. Do we believe that the Cabinet need to relook at that in terms of that risk? Is the funding adequate in terms of members of the public's view around that? All those in favour of referring that back?
Councillor Riley, Holland, Catchpole, Gouvanlou. That's 4, Chairman.
Okay. All those against?
Councillors Kelly, Adams, Pruton, Shaw, Murrell, Brennan. Bear with me, just on second screen. Make that 6, Chairman. So we got people not voted, I think.
Yeah.
Councillor Nairden, I don't think voted. Councillor Prutton, did you vote?
Yeah, I counted Councillor Prutton.
Sorry.
Councillor Nairden, were you abstaining? Yeah, Councillor Nairden was abstaining.
Thank you. Okie dokie. So could you just recap on that vote again? It was 4.
I've got 4 for, 6 against, and 1 abstain. So I'm still missing a vote, Chairman.
Still missing a vote, and I'm not seeing this, am I?
Did Councillor Kelly vote?
No, Councillor Kelly was against, weren't you, Councillor Kelly?
And we could do it again, please.
That's correct, Emma.
Yeah, thank you. Let's write Councillor Catchpole. Let's do that again. Those all in favour, please. Okay, so we have, bear with me, we have Councillor Karimi Guvanlu, Catchpole, Riley, Holland. Bear with me. That is definitely 4-4, Chairman. And those against, please. Councillor Kelly, Pruton, Murrell, Brennan.
Councillor Adams, well, but he's not there at the moment.
Oh, Councillor Adams, that's the one we're missing. Councillor Adams, he's not sat in his chair, Chairman. You need to speak to your Vice Chair.
Oh my God, he's been beamed up by the Klingons.
He's coming back.
Councillor Adams, can you confirm your vote, please, for item F on the agenda?
I was against the electricity man. It's just arrived to read the meter. That's
Lovely.
why I was absent.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So we're 4-4, 7 against, and 1 abstention, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okie dokie. Well, thank you, Joe, for your attendance and the officers today. Of course, calling does require proper scrutiny, particularly when you've had so many objections to officers' recommendations. So I think we've done a good job on that today. And as I said, we will be moving forward in the new year around scrutiny training on scrutiny questioning as well, which we are still all overdue. So that'll be planned out for next year. And yes, thank everybody for attending that's not a committee member on this matter. I'll just move on, before moving on to relocation of one officer team, because you've changed that around, Emma, for your request. I think that if we actually take a comfort break now, this will probably work out just right for us for the rest of the meeting, because I think this one could be a long one. So if we say return 11:30.
Yep, that's fine, Chairman. Can I ask all members to turn off videos and make sure they're muted, please? And we'll see you back at 11:30.
Thank you. James, could we just have a check, please, to see if we're all back?
Councillor Adams, can you confirm you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh.
Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, present.
Councillor Bullman? Councillor Bullman? He's not here at present. Councillor Catchpole?
Yes, here.
Councillor Holland?
Present.
Councillor Karimi Guvanlu?
Present.
Councillor Kelly?
Present.
Councillor Morrell?
Present.
Councillor Nurden?
Present.
Councillor Prussion?
Present.
Councillor Riley?
Present.
Councillor Shaw?
Present.
So it's only Councillor Bullman who we haven't got.
Okie dokie.
Chairman, Chairman, sorry, could I just ask Councillor Hempsel whether she has any interest to declare as she joined the meeting after we started?
Thank you. You there, Lana?
Oh, yeah. I'm here. Give me a minute.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, apart from portfolio holder, yeah, no, I'll rephrase that. I'm the cabinet member for planning and conservation portfolio holder for such. So yeah, that's my interest general in this item on the agenda. Thank you.
That wouldn't be a declarable interest.
Well, no, clearly. But you caught me off guard. I'm trying to do other stuff, and all of a sudden I've got to mute myself and show myself. I was like, no, I do not know my keyboard shortcuts. Anyway, yeah, hello, everyone.
Yeah. Okay, so we're proceeding to item 9. And we are bringing this forward on the agenda, and then we'll proceed to item 8 following that. The report that you have in front of you is here at our request from our meeting on the 27th of October in regards to the relocation of the planning department of Broadland down to the offices at South Norfolk. It's on our agenda today, and I'll invite Emma to present the report, please. Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll present the report, but hopefully you'll see in the room we've got a plethora of senior management officers here to help answer any specific questions, but I'll take you through an overview of the report that you've got in front of you, as requested at your last meeting. So the purpose of the report is to meet your request from the last meeting, and hopefully the report does that and will instigate questions, I'm sure. So just a bit of background in terms of hopefully not telling you anything that you weren't already aware of. Obviously, we became the one team from January 2020, providing the service to the two councils. During COVID, I think we all recognise how our life has changed dramatically. If you look at that for our workforce, we went almost overnight from 71% of our workforce being office-based to around 12% working in the office, and that was a massive feat from a technology point of view, but also for officers to reflect, to adjust and be flexible to working in a very, very different way. Throughout the COVID period, we did some regular touch points and wellbeing surveys with staff to make sure that we were aware of any needs and issues that they had. One of the things that came through quite strongly from those surveys was while they really liked the work-life balance of being able to work from home, that they really did crave the coming together as one team and working with their colleagues in the office. So that's where we've started to work towards the more hybrid approach. Risk assessments have been completed for both of our sites to make sure that staff that are in the building are working in a COVID secure environment, and it's increasingly important as we go through the second wave that remains the case. Able to do that, we've had to change the approach to the office locations and take what we're calling a zigzag approach to people sitting in the office, so that we maintain that 2 meters social distancing at all times, which I'm sure you'll agree is extremely important. So in early September, we had an all-staff briefing with staff to update them on the office locations, and you'll see from the appendices that I've shared with you at Appendix A to this report, which was also previously sent round to members on the 4th of September in your email. That shows there where you've got your primary site. On a very broad brush approach, the primary site for the Place Directorate is the house, with a presence also being at Thorpe Lodge. For people and communities, the opposite there, we have the primary site for them being Thorpe Lodge and a presence also at the house. In terms of resources, due to these being back office functions, they provide a presence at both sites, however, with finance having their primary site based at Thorpe Lodge. This is you've asked around the premises of how we've got there with that. I think I've outlined the desire by staff to want to have that team approach and be able to work in the same location, but whilst also making sure we meet the needs of our residents and our customers. We've adapted the way that we've worked quite dramatically over the last few months and are still learning every day on how we can provide that better service to our customers and our residents, which I'm sure you'll agree needs to be at the core of everything that we do. We've had some seamless moves that hopefully we haven't felt the pinch from, or we have no negative feedback from. We now have the elections team primarily based at Thorpe Lodge. That's working extremely well, enabling them to gel as one team and enabling them to work on the one IT platform. Likewise, with the human resources team, they're now primarily based at the house, but they do obviously have a presence at Thorpe Lodge for the staff that we have there, and that seems to be going well with no adverse feedback at this point in time. As I said, we'll continue to evolve as we learn and how this works. And then finally, Chairman, I just wanted to refer to the report that went to Service Improvement and Efficiency Committee on the 5th of October. As part of their remit, they received an update on new ways of working where this was covered within that report as well. I think it's important to emphasise that members will still have, and I would argue have had throughout COVID, access to staff regardless of whether they're office-based or home-based, and hopefully we will improve in that as we go through. Particularly now turning to planning, and we have the directors and assistant directors in the room to answer any questions as necessary. I've put there in 3.6 the reasons behind the location being sought. Part of that is to do with CNC operating already out of the house and the close links that they need to have with the planning team. It ensures a seamless service for our customers and our residents. And also agents who we meet quite regularly actually prefer the virtual method and the meeting through Zoom. So we've been able to achieve that as well. On the reverse of that, we've got people and communities. So that's the flip side. We have staff now primarily located at Thorpe Lodge. The thought behind that, and again, we've got relevant ADs and directors in the room, that Thorpe Lodge is closer to the city and provides a better location for our customer service and our customer base. And then finally, as I've touched on, we've got the Resources Directorate where we have that that approach where we have a presence at each, and then predominantly that has been driven by the space that's then available in the COVID secure environment. I'll leave it there, Chair. I'm fully expecting many questions on this, so I will hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. Are there any points that committee members would like to raise at this stage?
Mr. Adams.
Okay, just before you come in, Tony, is there anybody else's hands up at the moment?
Councillor Nurden has his hand up, Chairman.
Okay. Right, far away, Tony, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The first point probably is to Emma, and it's in the contract of employment of staff. And I think you will find in the statement of written particulars, bearing in mind I know a lot of you haven't got contract of employment, that in fact it says that you have 8 weeks to issue a contract to new employees. I think unless you have amended this already, it is now down that you have to issue a contract of employment from day 1. So that is just a point, just the first point, and you may already have picked that one up, Emma.
May I just come back on that discrete point, Councillor Adams? When this went through, obviously you're referring to the terms and conditions that went through in December. At that point in time, that was the 8 weeks. You're absolutely right. Now it's first day of employment, and we absolutely are achieving that.
Thank you, Emma. Right. Well, the first question, I don't know who's going to take this one now. I'll tell you now, I've got 6, so you'll have to bear with me, but they're all short questions, but might require quite long answers. The first is, why wasn't there any financial compensation for officers, including planning officers, who were transferred from Thorpe Lodge to South Norfolk House? That's the first question.
Sorry, Tony, you broke up at the very start. I didn't hear the start of your question.
Right, I'll read that again, Emma. Right. Why wasn't there any financial compensation for officers, including planning officers, who were transferred from Thorpe Lodge to South Norfolk House?
Chairman, I'm happy to pick that
Yep.
up and then ask
I think on the 6 points, Emma, I'm just to save coming backwards and forwards here. I think because you've got, this is the first point, Tony. If Emma, you can come back. Tony second, Emma, and I think we have to deal with it like that. And just proceed, Emma. That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
So in terms of financial compensation, Tony, the contract of employment for staff is that they work across both of our sites. That's been in place since the new terms and conditions. Therefore, there is no financial compensation necessary because we're not doing anything adverse to what is already in their terms and conditions. We have staff that are now working from home and in the office, so actually that travel and that commute is greatly reduced down. And also we do have obviously the mileage scheme when and if that is appropriate. And if anyone else wants to add anything.
Right. Thanks, Emma. Right, what help, if any, was offered to those who might have great difficulty in getting to South Norfolk House from Thorpe Lodge, and in particular those that don't drive and have to rely on public transport?
Again, I missed the start. Was it again about what was it compensation again, Tony?
I'll read it again, Emma. Yeah, because I know these things are not that good always. What help, if any, was offered to those who might have great difficulty getting from South to South Norfolk House from Thorpe Lodge, don't drive and rely on public transport?
Yep, I'm with you now. So in relation to that, we all throughout the communications with staff, we've said we want to work with them to help them achieve this. And as I've said, we have a presence at each site as well. So we have that as a backstop, but each line manager is having individual conversations with their members of staff. Should there be any issue as such you raise, then the line manager will talk that through with the employee.
Okay, thanks for that, Emma. Right, given modern technology, Emma, why weren't officers at Thorpe Lodge offered the opportunity of continuing from there?
As I referred to in the opening statement, a lot of the response that we've had through the wellbeing surveys is that staff absolutely, they like the better work-life balance that they're getting from working from home, but when they are in the office, they absolutely crave that team working and that ability to come together as a team, hence the need for the one location.
So, right, thank you, Emma. Right, we're getting there. In the contract of employment, you said based at both South Norfolk House, Long Stratton and Thorpe Lodge Norris if necessary. Fine, I understand that. To effectively undertake the duties of the role. So are you saying that given modern technology, that in fact you're saying that officers originally based at Thorpe Lodge couldn't effectively undertake their duties where they were? And what is your reason for this?
So you broke up. Could or couldn't effectively? Quite important.
Yeah, this is getting interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. I've read. Did you pick up part 1 of the contract of employment?
I did. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you are saying, Emma, that the officers originally based at Thorpe Lodge couldn't effectively undertake their duties from there, and why are you really saying that? Because given technology, they could be based anywhere, talk to anybody in the world, South Norfolk or anywhere else.
So I think this comes back to, and I may ask planning colleagues to add on this or any others, in terms of, we're not saying that they couldn't effectively work. What we are saying is that the need for them to work as a team was greater, and actually you get much more from staff when they're able to come together as a team. So it's not that we're saying they couldn't effectively undertake it, but I think probably what we've now got, and we've been able to show through COVID, is we've got all this technology at our hands that can enable us to work much more smartly, but can also, I don't know about you, but I crave that kind of that team working and that being able to just see people, and that's what we've tried to achieve with this.
Well, I do crave working with some, but others might be a bit more problematical. But yeah. Right, the next question. There are only 2 more to go, Emma. Yeah, in paragraph 8 of the employee's contract, it states normal place of work or base on appointment is as set out in part 1. Fine. In order to ensure the council's ability to respond to changes, the needs of the service after appropriate consultation and discussion with you, including consideration of personal circumstances, the council may make reasonable changes to your place of work base as may be required for the proper performance of your duties. So again, that's what it says. Why are you saying that transferring staff was necessary to respond to the needs of the service, or was this a strategic decision rather than an operational one? Also, what discussions and consultations took place with affected staff? I don't want personal circumstances. And what, if any, personal circumstances were taken into account? And I take account of the fact that that I know for a fact, because I get information, one member of staff who lives about a quarter of a mile away but doesn't drive has been transferred to South Norfolk. It's taken them a heck of a long time because they have to get 3 buses to get there. So I think, you know, would you regard a situation like that as a personal circumstances which could warrant them staying at Thorpe Lodge?
Tony, I think that might have been 20 questions rather than your final 6, but I'll see if I can capture all the points that you've raised. Nice try on the last one. So I think part of my answer, I would say, is the same as what I've already said in terms of the way that we're responding. I can't specifically go into details about specific members of staff. I don't think that's fair.
I fully understand.
But I refer back to my previous conversation in terms of line managers having discussions with staff as and when that is needed, and they are having that conversation around how, if needed, we need to make sure that we can mitigate any issues. And I think in terms of consultation, as I've talked through in the report, this was evolved and worked on over the summer months. ADs were involved in looking at this and making sure that the steps we take are the right ones for the council. We would never want to do something that would adversely affect on either council, and we absolutely want to do what makes our staff happy, because happy staff is productive staff. So I think I would just probably refer back to my previous comments, Tony.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Cheers. Right, finally, given in the contract under allowances, you can use discretion about the payment of reasonable mileage, as set out in the travel policy. So why didn't you exercise your discretion and give those officers that have been moved from Thorpe Lodge, where they have been for many, many years, to South Norfolk, why didn't you consider giving them a mileage allowance? Not necessarily 45 pence a mile, but at least a mileage, because you're adding many of them about 15 to 20 miles one way. 15 to 20 miles is 40 miles. Quite a hefty leap in their budget. So I just wonder why you haven't allowed any mileage allowance, and also it refers to a travel document. But it's not in the contract of employment that I could find. So why wasn't the travel document in the contract included in the contract? That's my lot, Emma. You'll be pleased to know.
Oh, I am very pleased to know, Tony. So in relation to the discretion over the reasonable mileage, the terms and conditions that you have in front of you were negotiated with staff and with the unions last year in terms of settling on what that contract looks like for all of our staff. At that point in time, staff were aware that it would mean travelling and working from both sites. So the mileage in there is to cover that. And as I say, all staff are are contracted to work at both sites. So in terms of discretion, in terms of reasonable mileage, obviously we have discussions with staff if they're out on site visits and what that would look like and what that would be paid for. But as I said, those terms and conditions were put together as we brought the one team to work across the two. That travel document isn't in the terms and conditions, wouldn't normally be in the terms and conditions, but is available to all staff to see on the intranet.
Okay. Right. Before I let Grant in, I've just got a couple of follow-up questions to clarify, Emma, on that. The moving to the one team concept, I'm picking up, I haven't got the document in front of me. I'm telling the whole committee this because I'm on my iPad. I can't get the document up and it hasn't come through in the post to me. And when we get to recommendation, I've actually asked an officer to have to read out page 49. So I'm a bit blind here at the moment. I've read it, I'm trying to remember what it said. But just picking up on, I understand that some consultation took place with officers around working together. And also a driver here seems to be CNC, which used to be in Broadland, based in Broadland years ago. And then they chose whatever to move down to the offices in South Norfolk. Seems to be a driver that because they're in South Norfolk, this would be why you'd relocate officers to South Norfolk rather than officers being relocated to Broadland. So the officers currently in the planning department in South Norfolk, wasn't it proposed that they moved to Broadland? And it seems to be a driver in the report, but tell me again, Emma, please, because I've got it in front of me, that is largely based upon CNC being based in South Norfolk.
I think
is that the main driver here?
I don't think, to be honest, Steve, I don't think there's any main drivers. I think our main driver for us and looking after the organisation is, as I've referred to a few times, is about making sure what's best for our staff and absolutely responding to those wellbeing surveys. There was the driver from our staff to have that team ethos and be able to come together. So what we did, we looked at all of our services, looked at the available space that we've got and looked at a number of drivers around that. So there wasn't one overarching driver. There were lots that we had to then work around and flex with. I think I may ask Phil and Jamie, because you're probably all getting a bit fed up of hearing my voice, if they wanted to come in terms of their specific areas and add anything on those.
I was actually going to ask Phil on this point after you, Emma, to come in, Phil, in terms of drivers and reasoning, because one of the key things I think from looking at from a scrutiny point of view, which I'm letting you know this, so you may be able to focus in a bit better for us, Phil, is of course reasoning, isn't it, around costs. We had mentioned earlier on around you need to look at all sorts of savings. We was talking about £23,500 at one point earlier on. So in terms of costs and the whole reasoning behind the feasibility study, in terms of driving down, heading towards a saving of 8.5 million, how much, if any, is there a saving by having this team, by having people together working in one office in South Norfolk? What is it? Can you quantify it? Is there any? Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Let me go back to basics, I suppose. As Emma's quite rightly said, a driving force in this is to try to bring teams together. Because when teams are working separately, then you often get a divergence of practice, you get a divergence of decision making, you just are not functioning as well if you are separate as a team. So an absolute driving force behind this work is to try to bring teams together. I'm going to be very honest and open, and Emma's already indicated, the team, my directorate, could have functioned very well at Thorpe, or it can function very effectively at Long Stratton. But when you look at the overall piece and you look at the overall team, there are factors that are influential in saying, actually, the place directorate, my directorate, is probably best placed at the house. CNC, you've already raised that, is a factor. It's not the absolute final and definitive factor, but it is a factor. The fact that the majority of people we engage with, developers, promoters, even members of the public, have access to IT, are able to travel, and so therefore it is less of a limiting factor for them as to where the place directorate is located, whereas there are other customers that need to access the Jamie's directorate, the people orientated directorate, that are probably better located in a more accessible location. So again, there's not one definitive issue that absolutely nails this and says this is the clear reason why we should be in these respective locations, but there are a number of factors that led to the decision to say place directorate will be along Stratton. In terms of savings, no, I haven't got a definitive figure that says as a result of this activity, this measure, we will now save X amount of money. But I will say to you that my directorate and Jamie's directorate and Debbie's directorate will be more effective and efficient by being in the same location. It's just the very nature of being together as a team. Can I be slightly audacious, Chair, as well? And you can tell me to butt out.
No, be audacious, Phil. I've always loved you being audacious.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I'll be true to form.
Depends.
I think what would help me in this discussion is to know what is the problem that we are trying to solve in members' mind. Because we can have a long conversation about the reasons, the rationale, but actually I think we could go around in circles if we don't actually know what is it that is the problem in members' mind that we are trying to address. Because I would argue that actually we can address those problems in other ways, not least by the use of technology, not least by having a presence of the team still within the respective offices. So it would be just helpful. You may tell me to butt out, and you're chairing, so it's up to you, but I would be interested to know what is the problem we're trying to address through this discussion.
Yes, well, I think the issue, first of all, and this is why I do love you being audacious, Phil, because actually opens it up, and the key issue here was this one of lack of information. Really, there was a reference to an email that went back out in September, which by any way, shape or form, one could not say was a definitive, this is what's going to occur, planning is going to move down there. It just was not. What we did have was an email talking about an East and a West team being reorganised around that. Again, no kind of explanation around this. And I think in this situation where you've got a whole planning team being moved from Broadland Thorpe Lodge, and you've got the Sovereign Council there and the residents there being supported by that, going out, and of course further north you go as well, we're quite a long way away, these residents as well, then the sort of transparent disclosure via a paper, via it coming through to cabinet, via it coming through to so that we all understand what's going on, would have been the effective way to deliver that change, so that therefore members are not in a position where they don't really know. We're here today because we don't, and we're here today because we're asking questions to try to understand. So being audacious around this, Phil, I absolutely agree with you. It's a correct, an adjective to stick out there. A question to stick out there in a way, because this is the problem. And when we was at the last ONS meeting, I picked it up via a rumour, and there was a couple of other members who picked it up by a rumour. So that's part of the issue here, which is appropriate for scrutiny then to say, for members in the council, can we have a report, please, detailing why you've done this, what your reasoning is for it, where's the efficiency in it, what will happen, for instance, because this is about service provision as well, isn't it? Service provision of planning. We hear Helen and officers constantly refer now to their customers. as you know, the way to refer to residents and also applicants in terms of applications, customers. So therefore, this is a service provision as well as a legal obligation as well in terms of planning. So in terms of those matters, is that strategic? Does it mean by moving from here to Thorpe Lodge, we're actually going to undermine the service provision? Does it mean that, you know, that's going to cause us more on costs? Does it mean that if you've got a resident living, you know, 20 miles north of Broadland, they need to come in, you know, a resident who wants to do something on their house, they need to actually speak to an officer. They're not going to use Zoom. Perhaps they're elderly, whatever. They need to see an officer. Does that mean they've got to go away to South Norfolk? Or does it mean that the officer would come to Broadland? And if the officer comes to Broadland, then that's an hour and a half driving time of dead work for an officer, can't do any planning function whatsoever, can't work in a team because they're in their car. And also there's the mileage charge in between. How many times is that going to happen? Is this going to be an on cost for the council? So there's logical questions because we've not had disclosure of the full case that we're being asked today. And that's why we've asked for a report. So does that kind of answer that?
Chair, that's really helpful. And look, would you allow me to respond, or do you want to? Okay, thank you, Chair.
Brilliant.
Okay, fine. I'll let Emma come in on the communication issue and the feedback. I just want to pick up on the service provision because you are absolutely right. Look, you know me well enough, you know the team well enough. Yeah, the providing a high quality service is absolutely at the forefront of what we do and what we want to continue to do. And I'm going to put hands up and say, look, through this crisis, there have been some challenges on that, but they're an exceptional time. But moving ahead, absolutely, service provision is still absolutely key. And just because the primary, and I'm going to use that word, the primary location for the Place Directorate is going to be at Long Stratton, that does not erode the service that will be provided to our residents and to our customers. And the reason I'm confident about that is site visits will still be carried out by officers. And yeah, in those cases, they'll often be in their homes, and they'll go on site visits from their homes. They don't have to travel down to Long Stratton to then carry out site visits in Folsham or Aylsham or Reetham. Yeah, they can do that from their homes, which may be even closer. In terms of residents having access to the offices, there will still be a presence at Thorpe Lodge. The only other thing I'd say, there will be some differences. So we still intend to provide a duty service, but it may well be that if we don't have a duty officer in the office at Thorpe Lodge, then we would have a Zoom connectivity to enable that person to still speak to a duty officer, even though they may be based at Long Stratton. It is worth noting, just as part of this, we have seen the footfall, even pre-COVID, we have seen the footfall of people coming into the office to seek bespoke advice going down and down anyway, literally just a handful of visits per day at most. Sometimes you can have one or two just visits coming in. So that sort of trend has gone down as well. So I don't see personally, and you can bring me back in front of ONS in 6 months' time, a year's time, and challenge me on this. I don't see the service provision to our customers, to our residents, going down as a result of these changes. Chair, I ducked the communications issue. It's up to you whether you want to draw Emma in on that.
Well, we're here today because of that, and asked for a report because we didn't have any, so that's just already answered.
Yeah, fine, okay.
But I think for your benefit, Phil, I think you were sort of saying, well, why? You know, well, that's the reason why, because you know we didn't know, members didn't know, you know, the reasoning for this, etc. So again, open this back up again.
You've got Councillor Bullman, who's been waiting quite some time patiently, Chairman, and then we have Councillor Pruiton, Councillor Adams again, I think, but we may ask others to speak because I think Councillor Adams has asked a lot of questions, and Councillor Catchpole.
Yeah,
I'm afraid you've left me out. I was supposed to be after Tony.
Apologies.
Yeah, So this is what I'm saying. Could we just, Emma, could you just hold on a moment? Right? Already had Grant down. I'm needing to check now because there's been some talking going on about anybody else. So let's just slow down. We've got Councillor Nurden first. Who else is indicated? Adams.
Then we've got Councillor Bullman. Then we have Councillor Pruitin.
So, yeah.
Councillor Adams again.
Anybody else at the moment?
Yep, Councillor Catchpole and Councillor Karimi Guvan-Lou.
Right, okay. Grant, fire away, please, and then it'd be Peter after that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I initially had 6 questions as well, but now I've got 7 questions.
It's fire away, Grant.
Okay. First question is that Emma has made multiple references to staff. And so my question is, why has this report been prepared by Assistant Director of Governance and not by the Chief of Staff? Or is that just a fancy title with no real meaning or purpose?
Can I come in on that, Chairman? I think that's quite disparaging, actually, and I don't think that's a fair comment to make. But on that point, I'm the Assistant Director responsible for Human Resources, hence the report is in my name. As I said at the start of the meeting, however, I've written this on behalf of senior management, so it's a report from all of us.
So why would it not be presented by the Chief of Staff?
Can I pass to the Managing Director, please, Chairman?
Yeah, absolutely.
Chairman, maybe, thank you. Maybe it'd be useful, Councillor Nurden, if we had a conversation offline with regard to what remit and responsibilities of the Chief of Staff are. I think there may be some confusion between the Chief of Staff and the Head of HR. And as Emma has already said, she's the Assistant Director who has HR within her portfolio. And this is really a people function. Happy to have that conversation offline, Chairman, if that's helpful.
Absolutely. No, I'm happy with that. Right, then my second question, and in the report there's also talk about staff well-being and they're being accommodated in accordance with their wishes. So I was just wondering if we could have some facts and figures for firstly, how many staff before the formation of the One Team were employed at South Norfolk House and have been moved and or reallocated to Broadland offices. So that's one question. Also on the same line, facts and figures, how many staff that were employed at each site indicated that they wished to be based at the offices that they have always called their base. And in respect of planning, of those that were employed at Broadland offices before the formation of the One Team, how many indicated that their first choice was to remain at Thorpe Lodge? I can also go on to dealing with the Economic Development Team, which falls under the Directorate of Place. I have heard that there is a number of staff that have left that team, and it was an effective team working at Broadland, and I don't understand why they have been moved to the house. So that was one of the questions. And then again, this is just a question with regards to the one team structure. Is it a case that the senior management team are not able to or not effectively able to manage their staff at the two council sites. And then I think the last question relates to, can the offices as the accommodation site, can the offices at South Norfolk House accommodate so many staff moving to its premises? And are we going to be ending up with a largely empty office site at Thorpe Lodge?
Chairman,
Sorry, Chairman,
may I come in on the last point, and then I can see the Managing Director and the leader wishing to come in as well, if that's okay. Just on the last point, I think we need to recognise that there's moves both ways. So we're not going to end up with no one at either site. We've got People and Communities Directorate based primarily at Thorpe Lodge, and the Place Directorate based primarily at the house. So we're not going to end up with this scenario that Councillor Nurden has painted there. Can I pass the Managing Director and then the leader, please?
Just 1 second, please, Ellen. Sorry, did Sean Vincent indicate on the? I'm just looking in the chat. I'm just trying to find it.
He's indicated. I can see him, Chairman.
Right, okie dokie. Because this is a problem with operating this via this iPad. It's really difficult. So yes, Trevor, would you and I wasn't able, because I couldn't see you, Trevor, to say welcome to the meeting, but welcome. And yes, Trevor, you fire away, please.
Chairman, thank you. So if I can maybe start in reverse order to Councillor Nurden's question, I think to suggest that the management of staff is going to be over 2 sites is to oversimplify the new ways of working. Through COVID, we've demonstrated and continue to demonstrate the fact that actually doing work in terms of responding to emails, etc., lots of that can be done wherever an individual is. So actually, as we go forward, I wouldn't anticipate us reverting back to the model that we operated prior to COVID, i.e. where everybody has to be sat at a desk by and large in either Thorpe Lodge or South Norfolk House. We will be absolutely working far more agilely than that with staff needing to be in the office for the things that they need to be in the office for. And one of the proposals that we set out to achieve, and this really is a focus on staff, is to say, look, actually, by and large, where do people need to work from? Where do people want to work from? So that we move to be an employer of choice where there's much more flexibility around the way people work. So if somebody doesn't need to be in the office to do their job, and actually we've proved that the vast swathes of people don't need to be in the office to do their job, actually working from home is okay most of the time, because there'll be occasions where people need to come to, and this is an important word that Phil used, to their primary site to kind of reconnect with their team and absolutely make sure that the briefing or the product development, whatever we're doing, they've got a primary site where that can happen. Equally, we should be able for people to work from different locations depending on what the residents or the customers' need is for them to be able to do that. So we went down through the management chain and we've had individual conversations with members of staff, because whilst we're able to work agilely, some people actually that doesn't quite work, and we need to provide them a desk as part of their offer. So you'll find when you go around either of the buildings that are available to the staff that there are some dedicated desks for people who need dedicated desks, some, for want of a better phrase, hot desks, so desks which are available for that department, but people will kind of use them when they need to and not when they don't need to. And some people who are by nature of their job and their preference designated home workers who will predominantly work from home. So it's been very much about giving flexibility, not just in location, also the times that people work, so that actually if that facilitates I don't know, picking up a youngster from a school run, or if that facilitates carer responsibilities, actually we're really flexible as an employer to enable that to happen whilst meeting the requirements of the service. So the management function really isn't about, can you manage people in South Norfolk House or manage people in Thorpe Lodge? It's very much more complex than that. And it's part of the challenge I think many industries are facing around managing in the new ways of working and virtual environment. But heaven forbid that we should revert back to in whenever we get to what could reasonably be described as a post-COVID environment by saying, right, well, we need everybody back on a desk in Broadland House, or we need, sorry, South Norfolk House, or in Thorpe Lodge. That would just be the wrong approach and would put us behind in terms of attracting and employing the right levels of talent. So we're going as far as we can to meet the aspirations of people, but accepting you won't make everybody happy all of the time. So the principal sites or the primary sites have to be there for each team. And we're already seeing where some of the teams have consolidated significant strides in forming that team and starting to drive those efficiencies in the ways of working and that consistency in ways of working as well. And I get the ask for, well, how many people moved from here and how many people moved from there? I'd suggest to members that to a degree that is somewhat academic. What's really important is, can we continue to deliver and improve the services that you need us to deliver? And the performance indicators for those services will be the way of measuring that, not whether somebody has moved from one building to another. And even that, even if we provide those figures, it would be somewhat academic. Some people travel from Suffolk to come and work in one of the offices. So you'd almost have to plot all of the destinations of all of the staff to work out if there was detriment or advantage, perceived detriment or advantage. And that would then need to take into account, well, actually, this person works from home 3 days a week. So there's so much more in the debate. And that's why we've taken the debate down to the individual level in trying to move forward. I hope that's helpful, Chairman.
Thank you, Trevor. Sean, you wanted to, yes, as I said, Sean, I'm probably seeing all the screens here, so I've just picked you up now, actually. So did you want to say something, Sean?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for letting me come in. Yeah, I'd just like to perhaps give some background and put ourselves in the place, perhaps what it is you're looking at and why you're looking at it. Come back to the original thing. We went down the route of a collaboration with South Norfolk. We formed the one team. The one team is functioning phenomenally well and is doing the things that we asked it to do to support both Broadland and South Norfolk as the two councils. So all those things have happened. And one of those things that was part of that process was to look at accommodation. And that's not a new thing. That's something that was way back in the feasibility study and was always going to come up at some point. It started to raise its head last year, as a number of people will remember, as things start to move forward. The end of last year, the structures were delivered and came into place from the beginning of the year, and then all hell broke loose. Then COVID arrived and changed the world for everybody, and also changed the world around for what we needed around requirements and the way in which people would be able to work both in the short term and the long term within the assets that we had, which were the two buildings, one in South Norfolk and one in Broadland, being Thorpe Lodge and South Norfolk House. So, we had to then look at the way in which our staff could work and the way in which they would perform coming out of the first lockdown. There was a move to start to bring businesses, and not just councils, but all businesses and their staff back into offices and working and starting to get the economy going again. Those things started to happen. Unfortunately for most businesses and most organisations, the people element got in the way, so people started to mix and people started to therefore spread the virus again. The issue then was that the requirements changed, and we're still trying to map out government requirements, and they will no doubt continue to change. So our world is now a very different world, and we find ourselves in a place where we have to plan for the short term and we have to then be mindful for the long term. our long-term accommodation requirements at this point in time, we really don't know what that would look like, but we know it's probably not where and what we've got at this point in time. In an ideal world, neither of our current buildings are probably fit for purpose in what we need, but that's what we've got, so we're going to make the best use of them. Come back to our people. First and foremost, our people, our officers, are front and foremost of what we do. So they provide the services, they deliver on our expectations as councillors and of our residents. So we do everything we can to get them in the best place to perform as good as they possibly can in their jobs, whether that be through the communications they have, through the kit they have, through the guidance they have, through the training they have, through the skills they have. We seek all sorts of ways to develop their capability to enable them to just get on and do a tremendous job for us. And in most instances, we see that time and time and time again, where our team just step up and overperform on what we would expect them to do. So our team is performing really, really well. So that's a really, really good thing where we sit at this point in time. The accommodation, yeah, we've got to deal with that. And as my understanding is, we have roughly 500 people to get into 2 buildings that, under the new regulations guided by government, will each building will take about 250 people. So there's a need to split the people roughly 50-50. And that's what's been done. You've heard from the team where they've looked operationally around what they feel will work best for the teams and how that sits. And again, that's not really our place as members to get involved with that. That's more for the operational delivery and how best that will be seen to work. So that's moving forward, and that's moving forward in the right type of way. Moving it forward yet further, where we are today, we're now talking about why is the planning team going to be based at Long Stratton? And you've heard the rationale and the reasoning behind that. And it could just as easily, as has already been described, be based at Thorpe Lodge. But we've had to pick different functions to perform in different places, basically by the limitation of roughly 250 people in each location. And that's the fundamental, and that's then delivering that in a safe COVID environment to enable the staff as they want to be able to work both in the office and at home around the delivery of the services, and with our management team supporting that, but also making sure that delivers an effective team. So again, picking up your point around economic development, being a successful team at Broadland and in Thorpe House, well, they'll still be a successful team, and they'll just be based out of Long Stratton. So it's just a slightly different way of looking at it, but the team will perform really well, as they have done historically, and as they will going forward. We have Tig as a new AD, a relatively new AD, and he will now drive that team forward for us, supported by Phil as the director of place, and that's really where we are with this. For me, I think perhaps if I'd ask you to come back to the fundamental, is that the limitation is the space we've got. The limitation is the number of people we've got. It's making those two things marry in a way that can work for the councils to deliver the services they need. The other bits, I guess, are the elements where the questions you're asking are going down sort of almost rabbit holes in for me, in the wrong type of way. And I'd just like to bring you back to sort of the overall approach in what it is we're trying to resolve and solve, both from the new ways of working and moving forward, but also the questions that are being asked through ONS. So I have a feeling I'm rambling now, so I'll stop and pause there. And if you want me to come back in on anything, Steve, please do, but perhaps limit me from my time.
Yes, thank you, Sean. I do like to be courteous, Sean. I actually was giving you quite a bit of license there, just in terms of that time. So, thank you, Sean. So I'm going to go straight on to the list of people waiting to speak now, because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to the last count, Peter, you're first, please. Fire away, Peter.
Thank you. Lovely to hear all these warm words. Some concerns. I'm going to talk about process. And I'm going to talk about the rationale and philosophy. If you give me a little bit of leeway to discuss those, I'm going to make comments rather than ask questions. Process. I can't say I'm happy with the process. We're sitting here today because the process, frankly, was flawed. There was little in the way of consultation about what was proposed. What we got was basically a paper telling us what was happening and what was going to happen. And I feel we could have been engaged at a far earlier stage of the process, and therefore we could have understood better the rationale for what is proposed. I don't disagree in principle with having a rationalisation of where people work, because essentially, obviously, bringing people together into one team does require a degree of rationalisation. And I do agree that actually having teams together work effectively. I disagree, actually, with the whole concept of everything changing fundamentally going forward. Of course, it will short term, but long term, I still maintain the view that far more people will be needed to work in office environments than working from home. Because what I've heard a lot of this morning, now this afternoon, is a lot of about the employees, precious little about the customers and how they would perceive all of this process. Let us not fool ourselves that people like Zoom meetings. They like the opportunity to actually talk to people face to face. And I'm absolutely convinced that's something that we will want to do going forward. The current level of service, frankly, is disappointing. Phil, you know very well that I've had many consultations with you about the way in which planning is performing. And frankly, at the moment, I'm still not satisfied with the way things are going. I'm not convinced, therefore, that what we are actually proposing, and the elephant in the room is, do we actually trust what is going on? Because essentially, there seems to be a feeling, though nobody's actually saying it, there's a diminution of the sovereignty of each council. I know it's actually said that, but I suspect that's what at the heart of what people are feeling. Now, we need reassurance from the management team and the leadership that actually there is no diminution of the sovereignty of each council. We do understand that there's going to be a necessity to work in a different way in different locations, but we need to understand that essentially that customers come first, not employees. Employees are there to satisfy a service, and that is what is driving me towards making things better in Broadland, actually putting the customers at the heart of all we do. Employees matter, of course they do. Their welfare matters, of course, but the balance at the moment seems to be far more towards employees than to actually our customers. Sorry if that sounds like a rant. I'll stop.
Thank you, Peter. You actually made some, I thought, relevant points there. There is a lack of understanding, which is, again, this comes back to when Phil was being audacious in terms of that, and also, you know, as you've just said, one, the understanding, what is it about, and also clear focus around service provision. There's a legal requirement in this as well to service, and you know, we've touched on that earlier on with Phil as well. I thought he made some relevant points. Also questioning, you know, ONS is what we're supposed to be doing, as you know, fundamentally. But I'll better move on, Peter, because we're really getting behind on time now.
Chairman, sorry, Trevor's indicating that he wanted to come back on that, if permitted, please.
Do you want me just to
Trevor, I'm going to ask you just to hold on for a moment, because I've got a list of people here, and obviously, Trevor, let you come back in, but I'm actually going to ask you to hold on, because I've got Sue Pruton, Sue Catchpole, Caroline, and Tony. That's where I was up to, and there might be something else from what was said there as well. So if you just hold on, I think it'd be a bit more efficient on timing. We might save another minute or two in that process doing it that way. So if you just hold on, remind me after Councillor Adams, officer, that Trevor's got to come in case I've fallen asleep by then, but I wouldn't have done. But just a bit of self-humour there, a bit of self-humility. Right, so Sue Pruton, please fire away.
You know, I'm going to make a public announcement. It is Prutton.
Prutton,
rhyme.
I'm sorry.
To rhyme with button and Sutton and Hutton. There's nothing like the prudential in this family.
They need to roll my R as well.
Well, that would be even better. Seriously, though, I'm not going to go down any of Sean's rabbit holes. I want to ask something completely different. And I refer you to 3.3, the fifth bullet point, which starts, the decision has been made as to where, which, blah, blah, blah. At the end of World War II, there was something, I think it was called the division of the spoils. And I'm very curious as to how and by whom this division of the spoils was made. Who debated it? Who considered it? Where was the consultation? Or was it just cherry picking, or I won't say drawing a number out of a hat, but how, please, could we have an outline of how it was decided? Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Sue. I think that ties up on some of the points that was being raised earlier on. So again, Martin, obviously to make note of particularly that, because it's a constant issue. And again, this is what we were saying to Phil earlier on. So next committee member is Sue Catchpole.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One for Phil. And I'd like to know, how are you measuring that there are no adverse effects on Broadland residents over the coming year, in order to report back, as you have offered this morning, that there will be no detrimental effects on Broadland residents? That's my first question. And the second is really for Emma. I believe all councillors must be consulted over factors that may affect them in their the performance of their duties. And I'm hearing, and have been for a few months, a bit of a theme that we're not being consulted, and it is affecting us in our ability to perform our duties. So could we please have something around consultation with councillors over things that might affect them in the performance of their duty on the ONS work programme, because I do believe we need to look into this further. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the work programme is later on, so we've got that on the agenda later on, and we can discuss that there, because you have mentioned the work programme, which is item, is it 9 or 10? 10. Okay, and whatever the point was to Phil, if you can make a note of that, please, Phil. Caroline, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point. I do understand the need for new ways of working and flexibility during these times, but looking forward into the future, as a fairly new member, I have found it invaluable popping into Thorpe Lodge when I come for a meeting to discuss planning applications and that sort of thing. Members are customers also, not just residents. And what is this presence at Thorpe Lodge going to entail? Is it going to be the group that deals with North Broadland, such as Taverham, say? Yeah, I just wanted to know.
Again, if officer can make a note of that and come back. And of course, so there's efficiency as well for councillors in that. When you're in the lodge, you can just pop in and be in bell before I'm in the lodge. Can I see you tomorrow? Yeah. So, and then Councillor Adams again.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to waste any time because all the points I was going to make have already been made by other councillors. So I have no further comments to make.
Right, okie dokie. All right, and before officers come in, I'm just picking up on a point I've raised earlier on, but Sue Scrutiny has raised around the where, why, and who. So I've got a direct question to Lana as well here, and also to the managing director. Was this discussed at a informal joint cabinet meeting? Because I'm finding it a bit hard to think that no councillors were actually involved in the detail around this or understand the detail around this at all. I'm presuming from what you're saying, Sean, as well, that clearly there has been some proper discussion gone on around this somewhere with the cabinet or members. So was this discussed at the informal joint cabinet meeting? There's now meetings that you know, refer to back on the constitution, another council meeting rather. And as Sue said, you know, was it accepted at that joint cabinet meeting that this was not a elected executive decision? Then actual fact it was more of a officer administration decision, because, you know, some of us have got a view actually that elected members in terms of the executive must be involved in making a decision around this. You can cut it either way, I guess, in whatever council you're in, you could call it either way. So yeah, so that question's in there as well. So on that list, I think there's certainly Trevor coming back. I think Emma might want to come back on something, and certainly Phil. I don't know if there's any others. So Trevor, you in first, because you did indicate earlier on first, didn't you, Trevor?
Chairman, would you like me to yield to the leader first?
Okie dokie.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so I thought I'd just come back in, Steve, and pick up on you asked about informal cabinet and the conversation that happened there. As I said, this wasn't picked up at the informal cabinet prior to it coming forward and the details discussed, mainly because there wasn't an informal cabinet of the joint councils in that time period. This came forward, as you will know, through the joint lead member group and was discussed at the joint lead member group, and updates were given at their meetings on the 10th of July, the 14th of July, 14th and 27th of July and the 12th of August, which was all prior to the email going out on the 4th of September. And as a member of the joint lead member group, you would be party of those meetings, Steve, would have gone through all the papers.
I was actually around holidays, Sean.
And all of the members would have had access to those as well, because they are available on the iPad. So all of those updates around what was being looked at with accommodation was in the Spark reports. So it was there. And as I say, Steve, you were part of that, as were a number of other members.
Sean, I'm just going to stop you for a moment, Sean, because otherwise this will get out of hand, because then I've got to come in after you. I don't know if you picked that up. I wasn't part of that. I wasn't at those meetings. I was actually sick at one. I was on holiday for the other two. So I wasn't at those meetings. And what I will do, Sean, after this meeting is I will go back to those lead members' reports to see if there's a clear proposition, which Sue's referring to, in terms of there will be a move from planning down to South Norfolk, and these are the reasons why. I think we'll go back and check on that, Sean. So thanks for pointing that out. If you can continue, Sean, please.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, as I said, I didn't realise you weren't at those meetings. It's a shame that a substitute wasn't sent in your place. But I guess there's no point going beyond that. That was the question you asked around where was it?
Yeah, and the point that's being raised, Sean, here is not me and the lead members group. The point that's being raised by Sue Pruton, this is the point which we're trying to address, is councillors. Sue Pruton. What's the point that's being made is councillors, not the lead member group, but councillors. This is the whole point that's being made in terms of their knowledge, who is involved in this, etc. The lead members group is not a decision-making body, as you know. It makes no formal decisions whatsoever. So this is the point that Sue's asking, and I'm asking: who made decisions around this? What elected members have made decisions around it? Lead members group make no decisions at all. They're not a formal body. They can't make decisions. So that's the point that was being made, and it's still being asked: who, what, where. So, Sean, did you agree to this, or is this not, or did you not agree to this? Okay, this is the point that's being asked.
Come back to your question then. As far as the approach, then yes, I was comfortable with the approach that we develop our teams to work from the best possible places in the best possible way. As far as red lines, there were no red lines given as to how that would sit between the two councils. and it was then with the operational team to come up with the best approach, which is what they delivered to us. And I think you now need to hand over to Trevor to then deal with that.
Yeah, thank you. Trevor, fire away.
Chairman, thank you. So if I can deal with, there were a series of questions. First one, in terms of putting the customer first, absolutely, whether you refer to the customer or resident, absolutely the focus of this. And I think the feasibility study, you're focused as to councils bringing the paid service together, was absolutely to make sure we were able to deliver as individual councils the best possible services within the resources available. So again, focused on the customer. The Section 113 agreement, again, signed by both authorities, allows the head of paid service to deploy the staff in the most appropriate way to deliver the services that are required. So in terms of the operational disposition of the staff, you have allowed me to move the staff as head of paid service and use them in the best possible way to deliver the best possible outcomes. So again, you've passed that as a management responsibility. The point you made, Chairman, around decision making. So the concept of where we were going and what we needed to do was absolutely exercised at Joint Lead Members Group and was part of an email that was sent to all members within both councils. The operational delivery of that is absolutely an officer function, and for us to kind of look at how do we make sense of this within the resources we've got available. That was accelerated somewhat because we had people, as the leader said previously, obliged not to be in the office in the first part of the lockdown. It gave us a clear canvas to work with. As we then started to potentially look at bringing people back to the office, it made no sense whatsoever to bring them back. They couldn't all come back to the desk they were at, even if we brought them back, because the COVID rules said you had to have 2 meters of distance separation. So we weren't going to be able to bring people back in the same configuration. It would have to be different. Therefore, why move people to something different to then move them to something different? And so the acceleration of this program was absolutely the right thing to do. All the staff have cleared their kind of pedestals and desks, so the desks were available to be reconfigured, save for people who absolutely know I need to be an office worker. And it was grabbing the moment so that as and when we're able to bring people back to the office environment as appropriate, we don't get people to move and then move again. So please don't have any doubt in terms of was there an appropriate or an inappropriate decision taken by members. The model that was put forward has been exercised. The decision in terms of disposition of staff sits with head of paid service and the senior management team. And I think we've done that or are doing that in a way that delivers the new ways of working in a post-COVID environment, because we won't be bringing everybody back to sit at a desk, because actually that would just defeat a whole load of efficiencies that have been worked on through the COVID pandemic. It will be something of a hybrid between where we're at and where we were. But the heart of all of that will be delivering the best possible services to residents within the available resources that we have. And, you know, as you look forward to whatever local government financial settlement is going forward, we will continue to have a revenue gap. We have got to drive efficiencies across both councils independently and make good your promise of the feasibility study of a shared paid service, which is operating effectively and efficiently. I hope that's helpful, Chairman.
Thank you, Trevor. And on that last point, well, there's two points here. The whole point, and again, Sue Pruton was mentioning as well, and I've mentioned earlier on, and then it's just been picked up on, getting a clear answer to that point. Is this a head of paid service decision without the right of the elected executive to have any right to veto on that, so to speak, or decision-making powers? You're now clarifying here for us all to understand. From your point of view, there's actually a head of paid service under the feasibility moving forward, terms and conditions, etc., etc. Sean has said that he was comfortable with the situation, reflecting what's been said here, and that he was okay for that situation to proceed on that basis. Again, give an answer for Sue here in terms of that. So from your point of view, Trevor, in terms of the questions we've asked today, you've answered those. We've now got that part clear, which is appreciated, by the way. Of course, you know, members also can be subjective about it, can't they? And you can have a subjective view that absolutely correct terms and conditions are what they are. Head of paid service, you can move people where you want to move them, efficiencies, etc. However, is it strategic? Is it about providing a service provision in a strategic way? One might be able to argue that perhaps elected executives should actually finally say yes or no to that. But again, it's a subjective view that people could take. But I understand where the administration are and yourself, Trevor, in terms of
Chairman,
the way
could I
that
just
you've made your decision. You know,
could I just
understand
clarify
that.
something in your summing up there?
Okay.
And I guess it's to do with the way local authorities work. So you invest in me as head of paid service, management team through delegations, the power to do things. And that's tolerably straightforward. Equally, there are two parts of exercising that power. One, you need the power to do it. Two, you need the authority to exercise the power. And that test was through joint lead members group, no pushback in terms of the approach. Through the email to all members, no pushback in the approach to say, are we okay? Because actually we've got the power to do it. It is a officer decision. Let's crack on and make it so. But can we just test whether there's going to be any fundamental pushback? There was no fundamental pushback in either regard. So actually, as head of paid service, I now have the power, and actually there's no pushback. So I'm going to
thank you, Trevor,
to exercise the power.
No, thank you, Trevor, because
okay.
This is a good bit of ONS here, and Sue's helping us with it because it's a bit of ONS. It's about getting to the fundamental crux here of, you know,
I agree.
And the point about which is being made about officers, and as you say, Trevor, I totally understand what you're saying, and about do you get pushback? Where are we? What's the mechanisms here? So we've got lead members group. You've got an email going out, and I think what became clear at the last ONS, and I think it's clear again, and I think it's clear in most. Please correct me if most of you think that this is not clear, but I think Sue's mentioned it, other members have as well, is that perhaps the situation, believing that the lead members group, with no pushback, as you say there, and with an email with no pushback, I think what we're asking for, if you please go back and look at that email, none of us really read that in the way that you believe it was really open, clear. There's reasoning being given, what is going on here, and also the lead members group as well. Just say it's no decision making powers in there. I will go back and look at the paperwork for that. I will. But having said that, if I had been at a lead members group and if I'd had some pushback there, what does it mean? So I think what we're actually saying is there's clearly, if there wasn't a communication issue here, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have asked for the report to come today because that's the situation. You've heard a number of us explain, no, who made the decision, when, why, etc. Is there efficiency? And you made the point very clearly just now, Trevor. So there's a critical point there. One other critical point you've mentioned as well on the efficiency side. I agree. And this is why I've asked earlier on, Phil, what do you think the savings will be from this, from working down there? I don't know. Could it actually cost us more money because of travelling around, downtime in terms of officers who've got to come over to Broadland now? I don't know. Has there been a kind of little, study on that? I know in multinationals, we've certainly done that before now. You can track it all through in the critical analysis chart. I don't know. So it's got to be tested against that, Trevor, isn't it, as well, as you say,
Yeah, Chairman, if I can give an example. So we've got the elections team consolidated in Thorpe Lodge.
Right.
We're about to go into delivering some really, really complex elections in May on the current timetable. May get pushed back. Who knows what will happen with regards to the pandemic. But we'll have the county, we'll have some of within Norfolk, we'll have the Police and Area Crime Commissioner, we'll have some parish, and we'll have some referendums. Having that team consolidated in one place is enabling us to move that service forward without coming to you and saying, oh, by the way, can I have extra resource, please? Because of the complexity and the environment in which we are delivering elections. We might still have to come depending on how things map out through the pandemic, but it is giving us that true economy of scale that I think was envisaged in the feasibility study when the consolidation of the teams was first mapped by you as members long before I arrived. But that is a working practice. The same with the HR team, which is found itself consolidated at South Norfolk House. We're able to move things forward far quicker with the team working collectively with a primary site that the team know is their primary site because they're working together. So I would argue, some of that dividend's already taken in the £8 million worth of savings that are already projected. Some of that saving will manifest itself as we go forward and things are aligned, but respecting the sovereignty of the individual councils and absolutely with the customer at heart. Chairman, I'm grateful for this scrutiny. It's really helpful in the process.
Okay, so could we take from this, and we've got to get on to the recommendation in a minute, of course, because we are running out of time dramatically. So on page 49, as I said, I am blind here. I'm working off from an iPad. I can't get documents up on it and have Zoom because the hard paperwork on this, the late paper didn't come through the post, which causes another issue. But so I'm going to have to ask an officer when I get there to read out that recommendation for me. But would this be a fair summary, committee? I'm asking you because I'm picking up all of the comments. I've just done a little cross-reference here. Would we conclude that, and again, I think, Trevor, from what's happened today as well, I'd hope that you would kind of accept this really as well and sort of respond to it, that what we needed and for the future as well is a clearer picture about what's going on, better communications, who made the decision and why, on such a huge issue like planning, moving from one area to another one. And I think you're right, Trevor, you hit the nail on the head when you said lead members group, email, no pushback, because it's about the power and then the authority to go through the power, isn't it? Absolutely understand that. So therefore, if you've gone through the paper, it's fed back in a more fundamental way, then if you don't see the pushback, again, then you've got your authority, your power, haven't you, Trevor, as you say, and also the executive, elected executive is role in that as well, which is very important in terms of Sean and his cabinet. So could we consent some form of words here, and I hope you would kind of understand the sentiment here as well, Trevor, and sort of pick it up on board, perhaps as we move forward as well around, the committee would hope to see a better form of communication for councillors in the future around these fundamental matters. Could we agree some sort of formal words around that? Would you be happy with that, Trevor?
And I'll be really comfortable with that. And actually, I'm really grateful for this scrutiny to support us in taking the work forward. We've got a lot of big pieces of work to get through going forward, and if we can aid them moving forward smoothly in line with the recommendations that you sound to be shaping, Chairman, that would be really helpful.
Okay, so James, I don't know if you want to just because we're all getting a little bit frayed with this now. I haven't noted it down. Do you want to just come back with a little frame of words there, or Emma?
Councillor Bowman has his hand raised.
Sorry, Peter, I haven't seen you.
Sorry, Chairman, it's just to make a recommendation.
Right.
First of all, Just an acknowledgement. Of course, Trevor has not exceeded his authority. We recognise fully that he's obviously concerned with and responsible for operational matters. I think the issue is, and perhaps he would reflect on this, that we obviously have views on these matters. We recognise that essentially that working together is something that we're going to have to do for the future, and we should do it. But perhaps the lack of involvement with ordinary members, and I include myself in that, reflects on how perhaps something like this should have been done in the future, so that there's a learning from this, and that when we have something which is a major change, and this is a major change, I accept that it's an operational matter, but it's a major change. We wouldn't have been having these discussions now if we'd been more involved at an earlier stage. And I don't think anybody can dispute that. So my observation is, shall we change recommendation 6, which I know you can't read? Shall I read it for you?
No, Peter, can I just stop you for a moment there? I don't know if there's an issue with my mic here, but you've just said exactly what I was saying. This is what I'm trying to get to, Peter.
Yeah.
So I'm agreeing. I think actually, we're both saying exactly the same thing.
We are.
So what I'm asking
not
James
disagreeing with you.
So what I'm asking, first of all, Peter, what I've asked James to do, so we can get it out, and then you can agree or disagree or whatever, yeah? So we can just get this out, because I've taken, as I should as chair, the summary from what people have said.
Yeah.
Form of words, which Trevor's just positively responded to as well. Could James, from what I'd said there, or perhaps Emma, just come back with a form of words right now that seem to tie it up, and then we can put that through, see if that matches with what you're saying,
fine.
Peter.
I'm just going to make a suggestion about a change to the recommendation, but if you want to do it the other way.
It is a change to recommendation, that's what we're saying. So, but we've got to have a look at the form of words, see if we can all get there. So again, James or Emma.
Chairman, do you want to say that members note that they have views on, to note that members have views on the relocation of staff, and would request for greater involvement in the process as it goes forward, or something similar to that?
Let's I think just trying to wrap it back up.
Or greater transparency?
Chairman, I think Trevor may have some words for you.
This is what I think we need to do, Trevor. Wrap it up with yourself as well. So Chairman, I'm just about to say something. Go ahead, Trevor. Go on.
But I think the point you're making is broader than this particular issue. And I just wonder if something along the following lines would work for you. That in the event of any matter which may be deemed to be novel or contentious, a report would be provided to the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny for consideration. So that in the event that, because it is this clarity of power and authority, and I get it's being made, and I do wonder if words similar to that might have a more far-reaching effect than focusing on this particular issue.
Yeah, and what we can and that consultation has to be with a view for oversight by Overview and Scrutiny. That form of work popped in at the end of that, Trevor, as well, because I'm not a one-man band here, as you know.
Yep. Then if I'd simply delete the word chairman, so that you end up with a recommendation that in the event of matters which may be deemed to be novel or contentious, a report would be provided to Overview and Scrutiny for consideration.
Brilliant.
And probably, Chairman, thinking ahead, a matter deemed to be novel or contentious, not otherwise reported, would be provided to Overview, and a report to be provided to the Overview and Scrutiny. Then that takes care of anything that's already going through a different system.
Spot on, Trevor. I totally and utterly agree with that, because you're right.
Could I just add 2 words to that, or 3 words, prior to any decisions being taken? 4 words.
Well, I think the whole, Trevor, can we just clarify, because I think Peter's got a point. What we're saying is this is what's occurred this time. So report coming through to the ONS before it happens is obviously the thing we want, Trevor, isn't it? Because then we've we've got a disclosure, we've got the understanding, rather than it goes ahead and then you've got the report afterwards and everybody goes, what the hell's gone on there?
Yeah, Chairman, I agree absolutely with Peter. I would just add the word normally, because otherwise you would constrain the management making any decision, because it could be deemed to be. So I think if you add the word normally, you don't frustrate the normal management of the organisation. You do test the intelligence of the team to go, actually, we need to snag on this.
Okie dokie. So with that in there, Peter, as well, I'm just asked for that form of words to be read out once more, and I'll propose that, and then we'll get a seconder for it formally from the committee, and then put it to the vote. So could you just read that back out again, please?
Prior to any decisions normally being taken, in the event that any matter deemed to be novel or contentious, a report would be provided to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for consideration. Oh, sorry, before that, Overview and Scrutiny, novel or contentious, not otherwise reported.
Yes, not otherwise
a
reported.
report would be provided to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for consideration.
Yes, but the normal processes of a panel, cabinet, that's what Trevor's referring to. So brilliant. Okay, now we are running ahead of Sean. So I'm proposing that. Peter, I'm guessing that you would second that. Is that correct?
Happily, Chairman.
Thank you.
Councillor Nurden is trying to attract your attention.
Okay, Councillor Nurden, please speak.
Just a quick question on that, the wording of that phrase. In whose opinion is it going to be deemed to be whatever it was that was after that, contentious or whatever? Who's going to decide whether it's going to be contentious or not?
Could I help you out there? Because this is a very, very, it's almost an impossible situation. I think that we're going to have to accept a judgment has to be made this by the head of service, and I think also what would happen in reality is that if there was something and it was like, oh well, I'm not absolutely sure, let's give the chair of ONS a call as well. Of course, then the report comes to full chair, comes to full committee, but I think it's going to be practically impossible for us to come to a definition of that now, Grant. I understand the point you're making, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult. If there was something that was novel or contentious and it was of an ilk that did cause a problem, and we didn't get a report, clearly we're going to have an issue. But I don't honestly believe, in fairness to the administration or anybody else, actually, it's very difficult to actually define what that is at the moment. I don't understand the point you're making, though, Grant. So we've got a mover and seconder to this. I'm going to put it to a vote. We are really getting behind time. And so all those in favour, please show.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Prutton, Kelly, Brennan, Riley, Karimi Guvan-Liu, Nurden, Holland, Bullman, Murrell, Catchpole, Adams. Have I missed anybody? I don't think I have. That looks like that's unanimous, Chairman.
12, yes.
Yeah.
I had 12 in my head. I was counting 12 as you, so I think we're there, aren't we? Yeah. Okay. Right. All up. Thank you for the report and the officers that have reported on this, and also the resolve at the end, which has been accepted and agreed by Trevor as well. So I thought that was actually a very good position on this, Trevor, and I know that you're saying you agree as well. So could we now move on to our next item, which we did actually delay, which is affordable housing delivery.
It's page 30 on the agenda, Chairman.
Thank you. And Lead Officer Kay Chan, is it?
Leave Chan, yeah. Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm just going to give a brief overview of the affordable housing update.
Sorry, Kate. I do apologise about interrupting you here. Tony, could you just take over for 5 minutes? I do need to visit little boy's room, unfortunately.
I do think
Could we
looking
all?
at people, Chairman, I think everyone could do with a 5 minute. There's a lot of wrigglers in the room.
Brilliant. Okay, so 5 minute break, reconvene at 10 past. And we should be able to speedily get through the rest of the agenda then.
Yeah, videos and microphones off, please, everyone. Thank you.
And thank you, Trevor.
Steve, I think we've got everyone in the room. Would you like James to do a roll call?
Please, yes. James, far away.
Mr. Adams.
Yeah.
Mr. Brennan.
Present, but may I just say quickly, Chairman, I will have to go in 15 minutes. I've got an appointment in Wisbech.
Mr. Bullman.
Also here, and I will have to go shortly as well.
Councillor Catchpole.
Yes, here.
Councillor Holland.
Here.
Councillor Karimi Guvanlu.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Murrell.
Present. I will also have to leave at 1:30.
Councillor Nurdin.
Present.
Councillor Preston.
Present.
Councillor Riley.
Present.
And Councillor Shaw.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kay, could you continue, please? Well, start your report.
Yeah, good afternoon, councillors. It's Kay Oakleaf-Chan. I'm just going to give a brief overview of the affordable housing update. Firstly, I need to draw your attention to paragraph 3.2, where the current policy compliant figure should read 28% rather than 33%. This is as per the Strategic Housing Market Assessment, as this is the most recent housing needs data. Within this report, we noted that Broadland has previously delivered around about 30% affordable housing yearly, obviously until the start of the current pandemic. So the table in Appendix 1 shows the previous affordable housing delivery figures for the district as percentages of the total build dwellings. So for 2019-20, this was 31.8% of the total new build dwellings. This was predominantly as Section 106 units delivered by developers, which were subsequently transferred to a registered provider. But we do now note within this report that the affordable housing delivery is obviously expected to be considerably lower for this current financial year. We do have hopes that we will rebound once delivery picks up again on sites, and there's been a delay, approximately 3 to 6 months delivery, so timescales hopefully will start delivering again. With regard to the registered providers, I draw your attention to paragraphs 3.14 onwards, where affordable housing delivery is being progressed on a range of schemes within the district. As noted within the report, many of the RPs are exploring delivery of additional affordable units by conversion from open market to affordable units. This approach was being looked at before the current pandemic, and we expect that this will be an important part of the post-COVID recovery. A particular example of this will be at Newton St Faith, where Clarion Housing Group have indicated that they will be increasing the affordable housing delivery from 10%, as specified within the Section 106 agreement, to 49% affordable housing. The additional units will be non-Section 106 units, which will be open market units converted to affordable housing. Clarion has confirmed that Newton St Faith requires significant levels of grant funding, as they intend to use all of their Broadland recycled capital grant funding to assist with funding this scheme. Clarion has also confirmed that given the significant stock holding, Broadland is a high priority local authority for the East region. One final point to note that's not within the report, as I understand a query arose at the last overview and scrutiny around the lead time for 1 and 2 bedroom properties. This query seems to relate to discussions with estate agents around the low number of smaller properties, 1 and 2 bedroom, for rent in and around Norwich. So we understand that this question refers to private rented property stock and delivery levels. So this would be linked to whether developers are actually delivering the smaller units as open market units, rather than relating to the affordable housing. For comparison, the table in Appendix 2 shows that Broadland has provided a very good mix of properties for rent of all sizes, but particularly as the smaller size properties during 2019 and 20. This table illustrates that the affordable housing delivered by registered providers has provided a significant number of new 1 and 2 bedroom homes for affordable rent tenure. In fact, housing and housing enabling have noted that the need is now shifting towards an increased requirement for the larger family homes, in particular 3-bedroom houses. So when advising on an affordable housing mix, enabling are now indicating the need for a greater proportion of family homes, and obviously including bungalows of all sizes for affordable rent tenure. The remainder of the report provides updates for all active RPs within the district. So we also touch on the potential risks that may be encountered from continuing reduced delivery of affordable rented homes. So the expectation is that this may increase pressure on housing option service due to less properties being available for applicants on the council's housing list. So finally, the recommendations within this report are that the committee evaluates the delivery of affordable housing in the district and makes any recommendations or suggestions as appropriate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kay. I'll open it up now for questions. Committee.
Councillor Karimi-Guvanlu, Chairman, and Councillor Holland.
Fire away, Caroline.
Hi, Kay. Can I just ask, under the affordable housing delivery for 2019-20, the 1 and 2 bedroom bungalows, you've got an asterisk against them. It says includes wheelchair adapted properties. How many wheelchair adapted properties were available on the open market for disabled people? It seems a very low number.
Yes, not all the bungalows were delivered as wheelchair adaptable, but the assumption with developers is that they will be delivered to good space standards. So with widened door widths, level access throughout, and level access shower. And we sometimes have to put in additional funding to achieve this, but generally within building regs, we can achieve wheelchair adaptable bungalows on most sites moving forward. So it is a small number of bungalows, but we do expect that to increase in the future because we are pushing for more bungalows. And we're now asking for 3-bedroom wheelchair adaptable bungalows.
Good, because there is a great shortage of these in the area.
Yeah,
I know from personal experience, yeah.
Yes, we particularly picked up on the need for 3-bedroom bungalows, and South Norfolk have us also.
Good, okay. Thank you very much.
Sue, Sue Holland.
Yes, I just want to ask about the item at 3.22, affordable units at land at St Faith's Old Catton. Is that St Faith's or Old Catton, or is that St Faith's Lane? I was just not quite clear where that was located.
Yep, that's land at St Faith's, Old Catton. So that will be the site adjacent to the airport site. Okay. That part of it is also falls under Norwich City Council area, but the affordables are located within the Broadland part of the site.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Anyone else?
No, I can't see anyone, Chairman. No.
Okay. So is everybody happy to move to the recommendation, which is on page 34?
Yeah, I think there's general approval, Chairman.
Okay. Okay, so all those in favour of and it's 0.8 recommendations that the committee sorry. I think that's to note that, really, isn't it? Peter? Yeah. So it's to note the position as stated and the recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah, happy with
okay. Yeah. Okay, okay. All those in favour, please show.
Looks to be unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, swiftly moving on to the last item, the overview and scrutiny committee programme, and Sue White, you're just going to articulate around that for us, please.
Yeah, certainly, Chairman. I'll try not to keep you too long, because if anyone's as starving as me, then you've got my sympathy. Yes. Okay. I'm sure we're all keen to get off for our lunches. Okay, so if I can take you to page 38 of your papers, please, which is your work programme. As you can see on page 38, I've just shaded out those 2 items because that's what we've covered today. Okay, so moving on to the following page. You'll recall at, I think it was the meeting before last, we did have the apprenticeships as a task and finish item. However, because of the changes involved in apprenticeships that had happened over the course of time, it was agreed that we would have an item rather than a task and finish group at this stage. We'd actually have an item at a future committee to talk about the sort of efficiencies that there are around at the moment for young people, such as the Kickstart programme. So that will be coming with your agreement to a meeting, to your meeting in January, and Emma Hodds will be putting a report together for that. We then move to the March meeting where we have the annual report. So I'll be working together with the chairman to get that all up and running for you. Moving downwards, we've had a couple of items on the work programme for a little while now, which I've kind of looked into with Mike Purshouse's help. So we've got one on there for the provision of leisure principles, which talks about health and wellbeing, improving that throughout the area. It was proposed at an earlier meeting of the committee, that because this was being considered by Cabinet as a wider kind of review of community leisure, that we would see that in any case through pre-scrutiny, and we'd look at it 6 months after that. However, through talking with Steve and also with Mike, we feel that that would be a good thing for members to actually get involved with at an earlier stage. So we could carry out some kind of a review or a touch or just an overview of kind of where we are at the moment with that. So Mike has agreed that that could come to you in time for the March meeting. So that gives us a little bit of time before it goes to Cabinet to actually have an input into that, rather than just pre-scrutinise it a week before, which doesn't give you a lot of time, as you know, to make a real difference. Okay.
And so if I just support that point there as
yep.
well, because this is really much committee what we should be doing as scrutiny, being involved at stages where we might help to focus in on policy or policy development for the executive, rather than just scrutinise what is going to the executive. So I'm thankful of Sue and Mike's support in that discussion that we had there, and it really is. We would then begin to start kicking properly, firing properly on all cylinders in terms of how we should be going about our work, which can affect policy and help to improve it before things end up in a final recommendation from officers to Cabinet. And that would be quite a step forward for us. So much support in Mike as well, and so there's in that. I think we'd all agree with that, wouldn't we, committee? Yeah. Okie dokie. Carry on to.
Yeah, I think Chairman, it's just obviously the committee has various different roles, and as you say, one is to hold the Cabinet to account, but another is to actually review processes. And I think if we kind of get it so that we're working ahead of ourselves and we're using the Cabinet core agenda to get in items kind of early to have some input rather than just seeing them a few days before they go to Cabinet, then it won't be that frustration that it's all set in stone at that time. So that's the kind of approach I'm trying to get into the work programme with Steve's help. Okay, we move then down in a similar way to the next item, which again was kind of put back because it was going to be a wider Cabinet decision in May. So we would like to get an overview. This is the community safety partnership. So Mike has thankfully agreed that he'll present something to us in January. So just to give us an overview of the Norfolk County Community Safety Partnership and really a little bit of an overview about how the changes that's making. I think I was speaking to Mike earlier and he said that in itself is having a review. So it'd be quite handy to have an oversight of it, and then to gain an input to actually input into their review in some way, and then maybe to hear what the proposals are for their review and again come back. So that could be a good one to get into, and then seeing that through really. So it's, you know, it's involvement with the wider early help provision. So that will be coming to you in January.
Again,
okay.
I want to thank Mike here for supporting the process as well here, because we do need the officers to actually understand that. So thanks again, Mike, on that one as well.
I didn't even have to twist his arm. Okay, so and then coming down to housing allocations policy. Yes, so that will be coming to pre-scrutiny in any case. It's too late now to get in any earlier on that one. It's coming in December, so that will go through the normal pre-scrutiny process and then be reviewed after it's in place, as is your remit to do. Moving over the page, we have got to page 40, which is the staff turnover at Broadland, and that will be coming back to you. As you know, at the last meeting, we put that forward as a time and task panel. So that will be coming back to the committee once that time and task panel have concluded and has recommendations for you. The next item has been on there again a little while, and that was to email the parish councils and to put an article in the Broadland News. And Steve will tell you we've been working together to form some words for an email to come from Steve as chairman. And also we'll be working on putting something in the Broadland News ready for the spring edition, rather than at the end of the year with all the lost in all the COVID nonsense. We'll be sort of doing a spring clean, bring your items to scrutiny. So we'll be working on some sort of, we thought about, rather than just say, have you got any items, to actually give them an idea of some good work that the committee's done over the past year or so. So we'll be putting something together for that. The broadband and mobile phone coverage in the district. This was something we kind of talked about, and we'd said that because Karen O'Kane from Better Broadband from Norfolk had given a presentation to the Economic Success Panel. Yep, Joe's nodding. I've got the name of it right. So members will recall that I sent out an email giving the link to that meeting for those members who weren't able to make it, so that you could get fully up to date on what was happening in that. We had thought about bringing that back as an item, but after speaking to Joe Copplestone, I've been informed that Openreach unfortunately haven't been able to meet their target of getting us the 2% of properties who haven't got connectivity. So without that information, it's almost impossible to take that forward, because we can't help those people when we don't know who those people are. So so yes, I've put that down, that once we have that information available in January, we can then look at it, maybe get a joint meeting together with Joe's panel, so that members can hear again from Karen O'Kane on the next steps, and then make a decision on what to do next, if members are happy with that. Okay, moving over the page. Water. Again, an item that's been on your work programme a little while. I think it's changed a couple of times in what the desired objectives and outcomes are. But having spoken again to Joe Copplestone, we've kind of been pointed to Joe being the council's rep on Water Resources East, and in your work programme you'll see there's a link there to their website, and Joe kindly has come along because there may be a way that you can get involved through that website in things like the consultation, that kind of thing. So I don't know if Joe wants to say a few words on that.
Yes, Joe, do you want to fire away?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, as you know, climate change is affecting us all and our weather patterns have become more unpredictable. We're going to see a huge amount of growth in our area, and already the eastern region is one of the driest and sort of drought-ridden places in the country. This will only probably get worse in the future. So Water Resources East is putting together a strategic plan, not just for public water, but also for economic water to do with agriculture and things like that. And they are working closely with the New Anglia LEP and other stakeholders. There are several strategic advisory group meetings going on, and if anyone is interested, they're well worth looking at. If you go to Water Resources East, they have got their initial statement of resource published in March, and that's very interesting reading, and they hope to deliver their final plan in the next couple of years, which will outline what interventions we need to make in the eastern region to ensure the water over the next 50 to 100 years and supply everyone adequately. Thank you. Okay,
Chair, if I may, I've just put a comment that if I may just add to that, if that's acceptable. Because members be aware that we're working on the new Greater Norwich local plan, and as part of that, the local plan team have had to carry out a water cycle study to inform the impacts, as Joe has mentioned, in relation to the wider eastern region studies that have been done. But a bespoke study has been done for the Greater Norwich local plan to ensure we have the right energy efficient and climate change policies moving forward in the plan for all future growth in Broadland District Council. So there is an additionality whereby there will be time to comment on that draft policy as it comes through next year when we go out to consultation on the local plan. But the key to any development is making sure we're looking at water recycling and everything else as part of that policy. So it's another area that members can get involved with as part of the Greater Norwich local plan. I just wanted to add in that there is also that study going out as part of that.
Right, okie dokie, thank you, Helen. So I guess you were substituting for Phil there, Phil Courtier, Helen.
That's correct, yeah, he's had to leave, unfortunately.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, okie dokie. On this, because I know, Ken, you had you made an intervention on this previously, but are we all happy with this as it is at the moment?
Yes, I think.
Program.
Yeah, I think I'm quite happy with this, especially with both Joe and myself are on and Grant are on the IDBs, which have a great impact with ADA and the water management. So I think we've got really good representation and a good handle of what we are putting forward to it. I went to ADA conference in November at Westminster. We've picked up a lot of good feelers and points and contacts there. So we're really on top of this. So, but it is something which is going to have a major impact on us, and we need to be right on top of it. And Joe will agree with this.
Okie dokie. So how do we want to leave this then? Because this is the point that Sue's making as well. Joe's popped along and Helen subbing for Phil. They've just made some comments around this. If you look at the first part of, and we're on page 41, we was going to have an informal meeting to arrange Councillor Adams, Kelly, Riley, blah, 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 to refine the scope of the review and draft appropriate questions. Councillor Copstone is council rep on Water Resource East. So where committee do we want to leave this now? We've got to make a decision today what we want to do.
I think as being on the work programme and advance it for it, I think that you know, probably we should leave this to Joe to update us on anything that comes forward. I mean, I don't know what extra we can actually do on this point.
Okay, we'll make a suggestion here then. Joe, because again, the overview part of scrutiny, you know, could you come back to keep us regularly updated?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Water Resources East are working on, you know, they'll work over the next couple of years with all stakeholders to produce their final document, probably in about 2023. I'm happy to update you on any further developments. I don't actually sit on that as a member of Broadland District Council. It's actually as the representative for the Broads Internal Drainage Board, and they thought it was quite good that I sort of cover business as well. So not just about public water. So I notice on your objectives it mentions Anglia Water, but there's all stakeholders involved in this. But yes, I'm happy to come back as soon as there's more information. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so do we see any point now in inviting Anglian Water along? So me, Ken, and Councillor Adams are going to scope around this. Do we see any need to do so at the moment? I'm not picking up a you know, everybody raising their spears and throwing them. Yes, we absolutely do. We're going to, you know, set you on fire unless you do. So I'm taking it no. So should we leave it on the basis that at the moment we'll have updates from Joe and then proceed on that basis? Yes. Okay.
Sounds fine.
Okie dokie. So if you could just alter that for us, Sue and James, on the work programme. So would you like to continue? I think we're really there.
Certainly, Chairman. Yeah, I'll just amend that one to as and when required, and I'll link in with Jo, and obviously if she's got updates, if you can let me know, please, that would be great. Okay. The last item on the normal work programme is again the council partnership register review, which again we've got a note here which is on hold. So something for the future. I have just made a note as we've gone through because hold on, where did I write it? Councillor Catchpole previously said that about the consultation with councillors. I'm not sure whether members feel that that's been covered in the recommendation for that item. You know, Trevor's recommendation that he put forward that members would be consulted as and when needed. So I'm not sure whether members still feel that that's an item which needs further scrutiny.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I've got the note here, Sue, on that. I mean, we've just got quite significant agreement, I think, in relation, which has been agreed with Trevor, of course, on the spot. So this isn't going to go off a, you know, determination everywhere else. Trevor has agreed that form of words with us as the head of paid service. So in the future, we should have the reports coming to ONS in that regard. So I think, Sue, that would cover the point you was making as well during the you know, during that debate.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, pretty much. I'm still concerned that I've seen several examples of the lack of consultation with members over the course of this past year particularly. So yes, we can leave it with Trevor for now, but I would still be bearing this in mind should these incidents happen again, that we could then put it on the work programme for ONS.
Okie dokie. All right, Sue, thank you. Yes, Sue, back to you. So Sue White's back to you now. There's so many Sues in this.
I know, it's too many. I'll change my name again. Okay, down to the last item, which is the time and task panel. As you know, this is to do with staff turnover. The time and task panel has had its first meeting and set out the terms of reference. There is a slight correction to where I've put on the comments there to meet again on the 2nd of December. It's actually the 3rd of December. So anybody on that, please don't panic. It's just my typo. So your calendar entry is correct with the 3rd of December for that next meeting. And that, oh, and also, yes, sorry, just the workshop, which we've already talked about on the following page. And that's your work programme.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so obviously that'll be minutes accordingly. We just 2 points from me really. Don't forget, peeps, we've got the pre-budget on the 24th. I know there's about 6 or 7 members that did some very fast training that Emma got in for us very fast for that pre-budget last time round. But we have got that on the 24th. You know, please attend. And then also in discussion again, this picks back up from previous discussions with Emma and also the head of paid service around more training provision for ONS, and I've now picked this back up with Sue White as well. We are still outstanding. It's still outstanding, rather, the fundamental training that should have happened some time ago. Of course, COVID's come along in relation to questioning and how you question, rather than opinion, question, and then arrive at your thought process in terms of what should happen. That is still yet to be delivered. So what we're looking at the moment is probably pushing forward for that in sort of February. Obviously, December, January is just, you know, not on really. I mean, we'll be far too full up with, you know, mince pies and things in January, hopefully. So push forward, hopefully, towards the end of February, beginning of March for that, which would be long-awaited training, which would be, I think you'll all find very, very useful.
Yes, Chairman. Yeah, if I can interject, I've sent off for some quotations for that training, and I can see that during the course of the meeting an email popped up from one Centre of Public Governance Scrutiny. So I'll get back to you on that as soon as we've had a good look at some quotes.
And the chap that came down to our pre-budget last year, Sue Scrutiny, we'll remember last time round, and Kenny, chap that came down, he said, yes, and I look forward to coming back again in terms of your questioning scrutiny. And he had delivered training for us about 3 or 4 years before that. I did find they would also communicate with the chair and the admin to make sure it was kind of fine-tuned a bit for Broadland as well, which would be happy, you know, which would be good in that process. So I think on past experience from Broadland's point of view, CPF would be the preferred sort of option there. Really, we've got experience of that in Broadland before.
They're the ones who've just emailed me back,
Right.
so I'll have a look at that as soon as we're done and I've eaten.
Okie dokie, yes, absolutely. Okay, well, we'll need to go and eat. Thanks very much, everyone, for sticking with it today. It was proper scrutiny today. We had no options around this. And thanks very much, and see you on the 20.